Cinemodities, late night movies with Rob and Zack. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, abnormal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally, these projects gel, while sometimes crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Rob.
And I, being of legal age of my own free will, after having been duly advised and warned of the meaning and consequences of this oath, enroll in the federal service for no less than 2 years and as much longer as may be required by the needs of the Federation. I'm doing my part. Zack, are you doing your part?
I'm just here to get a pregnancy license.
And we have a very special guest. You might remember him from a manslaughter discussion, but it is Chris. Chris, are you doing your part?
I am happy to be here to discuss His Holiness Paul Verhoeven and also the importance of becoming a citizen and earning the right to vote.
All right. Well, Chris, I'm glad you said it as best as we could. We are discussing another Paul Verhoeven movie. This is a great way to kick off 2021 for Cinemodities because not only are we starting a new series, but with this movie, Starship Troopers, that we're discussing to kick off this series, we have some tie-ins to a director and to another series that Cinemodities did way back when. So I want to throw it over to you, Zack. This is, of course, as we mentioned at the end of last month, the series that we are talking about movies that should have changed the world. Now, I'm not saying it should have changed our worlds, like Rob's world, Zack's world, Chris's world, or anybody individually. I think the thesis of this month is we're talking about movies that should have changed the entire world, like crumbled civilizations, changed flows of rivers around the planet. Is that about right, Zack? That these should have had a physical impact on planet Earth as we know it more than they actually did?
Yes, Rob, because it's funny. There should have been a companion series to this about films that did change the world that in unlikely ways. And it's kind of a shame that certain movies kind of had that ability, yet they haven't made a ton of money, but their cultural footprint is infinitely larger than other films that did make much more than them. But yes, the whole thesis of this series is films that are kind of way ahead of their time and yet never kind of got their due outside of maybe cult classic fan bases and groups.
Yes. So I think before we can jump into the Starship Troopers as a whole, which I'm very excited about, I think we're all very excited about, we, of course, as Chris said, are discussing another Paul Verhoeven movie. So I think this is going to be the third we've done on Cinemodities. I know, Zack, we did Total Recall way back when. Heather and I did Showgirls. I don't think we've done any others. So this will be our third. I know that back in Total Recall, Zack and I discussed Verhoeven. Heather and I discussed Verhoeven on Showgirls. But now that we have Chris here, I think we've already got a little bit of his idea from how he introduced Verhoeven. But Chris, what are your thoughts on Paul Verhoeven? And if you think you can, do you have a favorite Paul Verhoeven movie?
Okay.
Use 2 sentences, 3 if you have to.
Use as many sentences as you want.
here's the best way to sum up Paul Verhoeven for me. Controversial, very interesting. Just
Gold
take
member.
a look at this. Just take a look at this.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God. Okay, so just sit back and appreciate this consecutive run of directorial feature films from 1987 to 2000. RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, Hollow Man. Has anyone ever had a sequential run of that much madness? Ever? All of that stuff is, regardless of what you think about it, thoroughly entertaining. I could take or leave the stuff before and after that, but 7 movies like that in a row that's a remarkable window in time.
Oh yeah.
These were a hell of a decade.
I think Zack and I have said to each other, briefly, and never really got into it, but that there's only a few directors that really have a run like that isn't, franchise based. You think of the Wachowskis and their Matrix movies, or Zemeckis with Back to the Future. I think it's you got Verhoeven and Jimmy C, where they're just none of these movies are related, but they're all, have some impact, and that's really interesting.
And they're all so clearly Paul Verhoeven movies.
Yes. Oh yeah, I can't disagree with that, Chris. Have either you or Zach, have you seen any of his non-American movies, like what Flesh and Blood, or that was earlier, that was before, I think that was one before RoboCop, and then what, like Katja Tipple or Elle, the French movie he did? Any of those have you guys seen?
I saw Elle like a while ago.
Okay.
Elle was good. It's not. It's you read the description for it, like you expect like a much more Verhoeven-y movie, and then like it's pretty straightforward. It has what's the word, flavors, but they're very kind of like, oh god, they're very much like very, what's the word, baked into the background the way that you wouldn't notice unless you're a big like Verhoeven fan.
Okay. I haven't seen Elle. I have seen Flesh and Blood, and that's a very Paul Verhoeven movie, I think, because it takes place in medieval times, and it's Paul Verhoeven basically saying, there was no hygiene back in medieval times. Let's make a movie about that. So Chris, maybe out of that 7 or the ones you've seen, do you have a favorite Verhoeven movie, or do you just, kind of, do you find them incomparable because, like we were saying, they're almost so separate?
I view those 7, like, those 7 movies, like, is Paul Verhoeven in my mind, and I love all of them.
Okay. I know Zach and I have disagreed before on the best Paul Verhoeven movie, but I think Chris
what is the best?
Oh, Showgirls.
What do you think's the best?
Hands down, Showgirls.
But and I think, not to take this too far away from Starship Troopers, but
I'm gonna get back to it.
But like, I think Chris won't disagree with me. I forget what I said during the Total Recall discussion, considering that was like 3 years ago. And the episode is probably one of the more important Cinemodities episodes because it sets the precedent of if a film makes too much money, it can't be a Cinemodity.
I've called on that precedent, yes.
I know. It's a very dangerous precedent we set early on. Well, I set early on. But like every Paul Verhoeven movie is like so different.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like Jimmy C almost. Like it's saying that like, oh, which is better? Like, Rob, please just be quiet for the next 10 seconds. It's like, which is better, Terminator 2 or True Lies? And it's like, well, they're so different of like films. You really can't compare them. And I think that's the thing, is that like Showgirls is a masterpiece in its own right for a very different reason as to why Total Recall is a masterpiece. Like even Hollow Man is like very schlocky in its own way. I haven't seen that movie like in 15 years, but like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you could pick a favorite like Verhoeven film unless you're going on like specific genre or very distinct, like, oh God, I guess genre maybe. But at the same day, like I think Verhoeven's almost his own genre in a way because there's really nothing else like him.
Yeah,
I think Starship Troopers is in my mind of those 7 at least. Like I'm sure like there's somebody listening being like, oh, his early stuff's the best. You guys are so uncultured. But I mean like Starship Troopers kind of has it all in a lot of ways. Like I don't know how you guys feel, but I
think it's Verhoeven at his most refined.
Yeah, like it's just like it has a lot of notes that you see in the other movies, but like there's a lot of moments in this where like you see him satirizing some of the themes in the original book of Starship Troopers, but then also you have like some really like emotional character moments that like I think are kind of genuine, and I don't know exactly how that worked on the script side, but it's really a fascinating film. And, I don't know if when you guys want to do it, but I'd love to sort of briefly outline what's the deal is with the original book compared to this movie.
Oh, yes, we will. We are glad to have you, Chris, someone who apparently knows a good bit about the book, to be able to discuss that. And I think we're getting closer to honing in on Starship Troopers. But now that we've discussed Verhoeven, I would be remiss. No, I would probably not be able to sleep for the next week if I didn't bring this up. This movie has a connection to the first series we ever did on Cinemodities. I don't know if you know this, Chris. I don't know if you're an OG listener from, a little under 3 years ago. The first series on Cinemodities ever was the Dean Norris series, where we discussed movies that had Dean Norris in it in some capacity. And that could be in a supporting role, in a bigger role, like in the tie-in with Book of Henry, or Dean Norris just appears for 16 frames at the end of Gremlins 2, and we counted that.
Well, this is a happy medium. The Dean Norris pretty much plays his standard, like he's basically in terms of delivery, very similar to his Breaking Bad character, right? In this movie.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, yeah.
So I have to ask you, Chris, what are your thoughts on Dean Norris? Do you have any hot takes on Dean Norris throughout the years?
I was listening at the time of that series. I was perplexed as to why that would be the direction you'd go for the first series, but he does find his way into some interesting projects, and this is no exception.
Chris, are you aware of the fact that Dean Norris plays the same character in Gremlins 2: The New Batch as well as in Terminator 2: Judgment Day?
Well, that's kind of interesting. There's a lot of people who play police officers who show up in multiple films as police officers. That's
but he's credited the exact same title in both films. Do you remember what that title is, Rob?
Oh,
3 words.
Oh, 3 words. SWAT team leader?
Yes.
Okay, I got it. I still got the Dean Norris in me.
To be fair, Dean Norris started with the Book of Henry, and Rob and I are just like, well, it's like we need a connection to like a bunch of other things, and we just found Dean Norris because he plays a pedophile rapist in that film.
Police commissioner, pedophile rapist, police commissioner. Yes.
Directed by Colin Madman Trevorrow. And that's what we did. We went through his entire filmography. We realized Dean Norris has been in pretty much every single film, to the point where we actually had to start like excising films from that series because Rob was like, Zach, we can't do like 3 months straight on this.
I'm glad we're getting back to it, though. I think it's been since that first series that we have any Dean Norris in our movies, so I'm glad he's back.
Exactly. There was a slight refractory period where we had like come back after Claws. Rob, was there any other thing we could go to after Claws where he plays, what was it, Uncle Daddy?
Uncle Daddy, yes.
In his Caligula sequence by the pools,
God.
where
it's the memories are flooding back to me. We have a pool.
Non-flashback.
There's who would have thought that Claws would have musical numbers in it?
Cinemati's really did start on a high note. We really did set the bar high. It was kind of man, now I think about Claws and Book of Hank, and it's man, we should have saved some of these gems later and we were further just more defined as a podcast. Because now I think the audience would be eating this stuff up. Or we're just delving into sheer insanity where we just kind of blew our watch straight out of the gate. Remember the Hummer joke, Rob? Remember the Hummer joke?
Of course. Watch the front counter.
Okay, would this jog your memory though? Particularly if a cop came in asking.
Sure would not.
How you like me now, Jeff?
Not much better.
What if we add a Hummer? Oh, Miss Veep, I got this.
Watch the front counter.
Hurry up.
This is for all the old school listeners of Cinemodities. I'm glad though, Chris, that the way you said it was weird that they would talk about Dean Norris at the start. Yes, it was weird. We had no idea what we were doing. Not that we do now, but
I thought I was an old school listener, but half of these references are flying over me. So if you're out there and you get all of them, you deserve some kind of unsubstantial acknowledgement in the Facebook group.
Right on. Okay, Chris, I'm very glad that you are a huge Dean Norris fan like we are. But I guess then that brings us to, I'm sure we'll get to Dean Norris in his disciplinary scenes in this, Starship Troopers. The year is 1997. It's little more than a month before Titanic, I think it comes out. And I guess we got to jump into some context, as we often do. I have to say that I saw this movie. I was shown this movie, I should say, when I was very young. As Zack knows, for some reason, my dad was like, "Oh yeah, they're movies. You can watch whatever." And that's why, when I was 8 years old, he showed me Halloween, and it scared the hell out of me. I would imagine it's around that same time that my dad was watching Starship Troopers. I can't imagine it was on a tape or anything. I'm sure it was on TV, but I remember I saw giant bugs.
This is a definite HBO movie.
Yeah, I saw giant bugs. I saw killing. I was very young, and I was like, nope, I do not like this. And I always knew that Starship Troopers was or I thought I always knew that Starship Troopers was this gory bug war movie, and I stayed away from it. Even though I got more into Verhoeven, I loved RoboCop when I got a little older, early teens. And I got more into Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Zack and I've talked about our childhood, infatuation with Arnold. But eventually, it started to seep into me that this was something more than just this bug war movie. And if everybody remembers, there was a great time where Chris and I yelled at each other in the Facebook group, and Zack was rolling his eyes saying, "How do I delete posts?" Where Chris basically said, "You have to watch Starship Troopers." And I did. And this was maybe a little over a year ago, and this was the first time I really sat down and watched it, and I was like, holy shit, this movie's amazing. In the last maybe year and a half, I think I've now seen it 3 times. I, of course, watched it last night for this recording, so I could have it fresh in my head. So I have the least amount of context with this. Before this recording, Zack and Chris were saying how, you know, they know basically everything about this movie. They don't need to rewatch it and all that stuff. But I guess I'll throw it over to you next, Zack. Was this the difference that when you were 8 and watched this movie, you were like, yeah, down with fascism?
No, actually, my context with this is really interesting because it kind of was a definition of like a formative point in my life where I was always the movie person. I think I've told the infamous story about how like when I saw the A-Teens was the same day I got introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator. Like it was like one of those days where it was like, wow, like talk about like it was kind of up there with that woman that was like friends with my mother who introduced me both to Star Wars and Titanic. And so, like, I can still remember, like, when I watched this for the very first time, my mother and I were visiting my grandmother who lived up in the Catskills, and my grandmother had no, like, cable, no internet. It was just basically anything that came over the airwaves. And so I'm not sure people remember, like Fox, like the broadcast network would like on Sunday nights have like a movie of the week. And I could be wrong about the dates, but I'm pretty sure it was the summer of 2002. My uncle was getting married. And so we were up there and like Fox, like on a Sunday night was playing Starship Troopers at 8 p.m. And I can only imagine what a TV, like a broadcast network TV cut of Starship Troopers looks like. Like I would love to see that edit. Like if anybody, like if someone has a Goosebumps like vision version of Starship Troopers like ripped from their like TV collection for some reason, I would love to see that. But like I remember watching that with my mother and she's being like completely like detested about like the Bug movie. Like that's how she like anytime I brought up Starship Troopers, she always knew that as the Bug movie, and that's how I was first introduced to it. And I don't know if this was before or afterwards, because when we would come to visit, like my grandmother, we would always stay for 2 weeks. And I'm not sure if it was the weekend before or after this was also the first time I ever watched The Matrix. So like we're talking about like a really big seminal moment when it came to Zack in movies, because I saw The Matrix and then I saw Starship Troopers or the other way around. So I always loved Starship Troopers because it was like to a kid. So I was, I think, 10 years old when I saw this. I wasn't as young as Rob, but like I remember just being like, yeah, action war bug movie. And so like to a 10-year-old, you couldn't ask for a better movie than this. I kind of don't remember when I started to actually realize the sheer brilliance of this film and that how it's maybe a masterpiece of filmmaking. I don't know when that happened. The next memory I have for this film is I remember being in college as a sophomore, really wanting the Blu-ray for this, then getting it that summer because it's always like one of those, I don't know now, but I remember it being like a Blu-ray that like was always like heavily discounted. It was like you could always get it for like $5. Even today I was at Walmart earlier this morning and they had the 4K Blu-ray for like $15. And it kind of delighted me that like this is a film that's always been accessible. It's not like one of those films that kind of like just disappeared into the ether like other Verhoeven films like Showgirls or Hollow Man. It's always available up there with like RoboCop, and that like if you just have any store that sells Blu-rays, you can easily track down a version of this film or a copy that is. But yeah, that's kind of my entire context with Starship Troopers. I can't tell you when I started to realize it was a masterpiece, but it's definitely like I'd say within the last decade I've been firmly aware of it. It's just this film that's beyond profound for what it gets credit for. Okay, right on. And then I guess that brings us to Chris, who and feel free now if you want to talk about your history with the movie. But it sounds like you have some earlier history with the book, so feel free to enlighten us. We are uncultured. We don't know how to read, to be honest.
No, well, I
definitely can't read.
It's quite all right. This is an easy short one. So like obviously you know it's written by famed science fiction author Robert Heinlein, and it really marks sort of a pivotal point for his career where he was sort of like what you might call today a young adult author up until this book, really. And so it came out in 59 actually, and it's if you just if you stripped away the tone and looked at it sort of like in a sort of beat for beat plot sense, the movie is remarkably faithful to a book from 1959, which you might find surprising, but obviously there's a lot more layers going on in the movie than you got in the book. But the book was quite controversial at the time, and not because of sex or violence or anything like that, but because it presented this idea that you shouldn't be able to vote unless you've done a term of federal service to some degree. And this was something that it's much discussed among Heinlein fans about whether that meant literally military service or some sort of federal civil service. Like Heinlein would go on to elaborate that he just meant that you should do something for your country more so than literal military service to earn the right to vote. And that idea was something he wanted to talk about because in 1958 Eisenhower was considering this unilateral cessation of nuclear weapons testing because the Soviets promised they would do the same thing, and Heinlein was like totally opposed to this, and he wanted to, and it's just sort of the popular consensus that we better stop doing that because it's the right thing to do, because he just thought the Soviets were notoriously untrustworthy. So this book is really sort of like the aspect about the earning the right to vote is a lot to do with if you're gonna be able to make those kind of decisions, you should have some context for what you're voting for, basically, is I think the idea of that. And so when you look at it that way, if you look at that sort of the message he was trying to go with the book, we really got a bit of a left turn when it comes to the movie, right?
Oh yeah.
so let me read you a quote about let's also stress that this book was thrown together in 6 weeks because he wanted to make a statement about this decision. So he wrote this book in 6 weeks, and it sort of marked the end of his young adult writing. And now here's Paul Verhoeven, a quote from Paul Verhoeven on the book. I stopped reading after 2 chapters because it was so boring. It's really quite a bad book. I asked Ed to tell me the story because I couldn't read the thing. It's a very right-wing book. In the movie, we tried, and at least think partially succeeded in commenting on that at the same time. It would be like having your cake and eating it too. So it's sort of like, I wish I knew more about sort of how he got connected to the project, but like it's a remarkable time when you have a director of doing a film adaptation of a novel by a famed science fiction author, and his main thought on the matter is, it's boring, I didn't like it, I had someone summarize the story for me.
I'm glad you read that quote. I had that down too, and I always find that so fascinating. I think Zack does as well. I think what we discussed it when we did Annihilation, that the guy exactly, the guy read the book or read part of the book and was like, this is terrible, I'm just going to take the basic idea and make my own movie about it. So Paul Verhoeven was doing that years before, and I mean, I think that's what, as far as I'm concerned, I really like that sense in movies being adapted from literary works or from anything else, that, I don't really just want a straight retelling. I want these creative forces to put their own twist on it, and that's exactly what Verhoeven did.
Tell that to Stephen King, Rob.
Well, that's why I don't really like Stephen King.
One last note about context. Much like you, Rob, like this was something that, like, this was maybe one of the first DVDs that my parents brought home, and my dad was just like, "This is awesome. We're gonna watch it on my new surround sound system." And
Nice.
it's been a strong part of my pop culture worldview ever since.
Okay, right on. I guess I should say I almost forgot that my other context with Starship Troopers is that it's a song by the band Yes that I really like, and I know the song is actually influenced by the book, but I don't know in what way. So I guess that brings us to talking about the actual movie. And before we get into it, before I throw it over to see Zach how he wants to break it down with this movie that should have changed the way rivers flow, I have to go over to the dark parts of IMDb, which are the trivia sections and the parental guide sections. I have to get this out of the way.
Parental guide is fun. I don't know about trivia, but parental guide can be fun.
Well, I call them the dark parts because they're both the place where anybody can put whatever they want, and it never has any checks or balances, and it basically just exists for the rest of time. In the profanity section of the IMDb parental guide, someone wrote some blasphemy. I found that very funny.
Partial blasphemy. just a slight amount to be offended about.
In the sex and nudity section, though, someone was really, really not into the co-ed shower scene. And they wrote, men and women are seen clustered in the showering room as they take a shower. Women in background are fully naked, and they scrub their big breasts and vaginal mound with soap. This scene lasts nearly a minute. I don't think we see anything below the waist, unless it's a butt shot, right? We don't see any vaginal mound scrubbing.
They're kind of making it sound a lot better than it was.
Yeah.
Vaginal mound, I mean, one of my favorite combinations of any two words in the English language now.
Somebody saw this and got turned on and then, flogged themselves and went, I need to tell the rest of the world.
It was the same guy who wrote about the blasphemy, that's right. Yeah.
He's like, I have experienced sin, and IMDb must know about it. I found that crazy. Of course, in the sex and nudity section, there's other things that just say, like, there is naked people in a shower, like men and women together, like very matter-of-factly, as you should explain that scene, because it is not played for a sexiness at all. But this person just went all out on it. And then in the trivia, there's a lot of trivia for this movie. It's redundant because the trivia sections for popular movies or, cult classics, whatever you want to call this, always are. But somebody wrote, which I was laughing hysterically when I found this, and I don't know if it's true. I didn't do any research into this to see if I could find an interview to back it up or anything like that, because I just loved that it was just stated so bluntly. Somebody wrote, every kissing scene with Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards required a minimum of 5 takes because they couldn't fit their ridiculously oversized jaws together. That has to be a joke. Like, I did not find this anywhere else. That has to be a joke. That someone was like, yeah, I'm just going to goof on people with big chins.
That sounds like something left over from like early 2000s IMDb, like when they used to have like forums and stuff. Like, I'm surprised that wouldn't be like tidied up by now. That movie should have a lot of traffic on the site.
Oh yeah, I think there was something like Oh yeah, I loved that one. There's like 250 things. Oh yeah, IMDb is a lawless wasteland over there.
It's just, the sad thing, they tried to clean up a couple of years ago when they got rid of the message boards, like Chris was saying, and yet still I love how there's little gems like that just kind of sneak through.
All right. So I guess Zach, how do we want to break this down? Do we need to talk about plot at all? What were you thinking?
Oh God. Okay. The thing about this movie is, like, I would imagine anybody listening to this podcast has seen it. It's like, I don't even know how you would break this down like the most condensed way possible. It's a movie about a bunch of intentional cardboard cutouts.
Yes.
That join the military for various reasons, and they go to fight bugs, and everybody kind of loses their soul in the process because that's the point. And that's kind of it. Like, I would imagine we're going to probably kind of like unfurl the plot of the movie through just discussing different sequences, but that's kind of it. Like, oh God, like, again, there's the more and more I think about this movie, there's so many things in this that it's a shame that like audiences in 1997 didn't appreciate. Like one of those sequences that I didn't really get into the last couple of years was that when Casper Van Dien is like being flogged, he's being done so by a black man. And I'm like, how did nobody in 1997 not like pick up on this and just be like, wow, this is like, again, I'm going to use this word a lot in this discussion, but profound. It's like this is the type of movie we wish they would continue to make. And yet they made this movie with a ridiculously high budget, a much higher budget than they should have ever given a film like this. And I don't want to get too philosophical here, too, like, I guess, abstract when it comes to Verhoeven's career. But like between like there was a 3-way punch that kind of killed his career in Hollywood, and it began with Showgirls and it ended with Hollow Man.
Okay, interesting.
But like that's the thing though. Like this is the type of movie that like I know when I originally was pitching this series to Rob, like I kind of wanted to do Mad Max Fury Road in here instead, or at some point in this series, and Rob kind of talked me out of it. But I feel like this is one of those movies that understands like sarcasm, cynicism, all these things that like we claim to want now, and yet this film still is like, I don't know, Chris, maybe you can tell me, but like there's this thing that I've mentioned a few times on this podcast where like something like Evil Dead 2, I feel has like firmly transcended beyond cult classic to mainstream classic. And I feel like Starship Troopers is by like still like an unseen gem. Like, do either one of you disagree with that, or am I just like looking at this under the wrong lens?
I think that it's probably a little more pervasive in the pop culture landscape than you're giving it credit for these days. I don't know about U.S. Netflix, but it's on the Canadian Netflix right now, and Evil Dead 2 even is a little harder to find most of the time. But I think this is sort of like, and maybe it's and as much as you hate aliens, Rob, there's something going on with like the iconography of this movie that whether like they take some stuff from Aliens and then the stylistic child of Aliens and Starship Troopers is kind of like the Halo video games for me, and I feel like they all sort of like it sort of like flows in that direction. And like I don't know about you guys, I'm a huge fan of the Halo series, and like I think there's a ton of stuff that Starship Troopers informed there, and I think that like a lot of people I know are familiar with it, and they like they know there's that extra layer to it that is like may not have been appreciated at the time, but that might just be the people I talk to, right? It's sort of, there's probably just a lot more, as we like to call, filthy casuals out there who sort of watch it and see the scenes where the advertisements for the military where the children are like grabbing all the ammo and stuff, and see that and just roll their eyes and think it's a trash movie, and it just goes right over their head. Maybe there's just too many of those people out there.
I think that's what I've found, and I mean, well, I got Zack, I got Chris, I got the podcast community, but the other people I talk to are like Ben and Justin, and they have no idea what Starship Troopers is. They don't even know like that it's a bug war movie beyond any layer than that, if they even do know that. But that's the thing that I've always been intrigued by. After I finally saw this movie, it's not just that, oh, we got to go fight the bugs. Like, there is so much more going on. And when I was doing my research for this episode, and as Zach mentioned, this got basically derided when it came out, it seemed like people were saying that, oh, it's so pro-violence and pro-war. And I'm like, did you see the movie? It starts with Michael Ironside saying that voting is an exercise in force, and violence has solved more problems than any other measure. And I'm like, how do you think this is pro anything? I think it's more profound, and I don't really see how people got that. Of course, it was a different time. I didn't see it in 1997. But that's the thing that baffles me. I think what you were getting at, Chris, that there's so many people who take this at a surface level when it should be thought about much, much more.
I mean, it's just I almost don't believe that's possible when you have, and one of your what we've already talked about, it seems like 3 times, but one of your favorite scenes is when our trio of leads go up to the recruitment desk and have an exchange with someone. I don't know if you want to get into that. I won't steal it from you.
That is one of the funniest scenes in this movie. That is one of the funniest like jokes in cinematic history, where they're like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm military intelligence. I'm going to be a pilot." "What about you, son?" "Mobile infantry." "Ah, good man. That mobile infantry made me the man I am today." And the dude has a robotic arm and no legs.
Now, it would be one thing if it was just your average sort of medium close-up and we're focusing on the guy's eyes. But no, the camera, it's an insert shot of his robot arm.
Yep.
It's not, and if that goes over your head, like, what are we even talking about right now?
Yeah. If you don't get that is like played for, I've played for somewhat of like maybe a dry laugh, like a Verhoeven laugh. I don't know if we can coin that phrase. It's not really like dry wit. It's satire. It's
early in the movie.
Yeah. And I think, I love satire. That's one of my favorite, kind of forms of anything. And I think one of the best qualities of a satire is that it has to seem realistic. Like, you have to get people who think it's true. And this movie walks that line so finely that I think that the people who say, oh man, this movie is pro-Nazis, pro-fascism, pro-violence, it's like that's a benefit to the movie, I have to say. I think that it's weird. I could never watch this movie and go, oh yeah, I'm gonna join the military, this movie glorifies it. But you need to have believability. It's like The Onion. You need people who retweet The Onion and be like, "Can you believe this?" for it to be good satire.
Well, maybe I'm giving the world of the world that I do romanticize of 1997 when this film was released. Maybe I'm giving those people too much credit, but perhaps the author's original intention of implying that you should do some federal service to earn your right to vote, of the something that's present in the novel, where that is treated much more seriously in the novel. Like maybe that was maybe people had a cultural reference point of that's what that book is about, and this movie is if you just look at it on paper, it's a somewhat faithful retelling of that story. Maybe that was impacting the way people interpreted it at the time, or maybe they didn't watch it but knew what that book was about.
Do you know if this is one of Heinlein's more popular novels? Because I know this was the book right before Stranger in a Strange Land, which has to be his most well-known work. Do you know if this one was big?
It's number one or number two in terms of like filthy casuals knowing the name of it.
Okay. Okay, right on. Zach, what do you think about this satire versus belief idea?
Well, that's kind of the thing that's interesting about this, is that like I don't know if how much. Oh God, like that's the thing. Like you could tell all this was baked into the pie with this movie. But getting back to like Chris's point about audiences in 1997, is like I looked up Roger Ebert's review from the time, and he only gave this film a 2 out of 4, which means Ebert was kind of for the most part lukewarm on it. He didn't hate it, but at the end of the day, he really thought there was really no merit to ever watching it. And you see things like in his review, he's like, discussing the science of Starship Troopers is beside the point. Verhoeven is facing in the other direction. He wants to depict the world of the future as it might have been visualized in the mind of a kid reading Heinlein in 1956. He faithfully represents Heinlein's militarism, his big brother state, in a value system in which the highest good is to kill a friend before the bugs can eat him. The underlying ideas are the most interesting aspect of the film. What's lacking is exhilaration and sheer entertainment. Unlike the Star Wars movies, which embraced a joyous vision and great comic invention, Starship Troopers doesn't resonate. It's one-dimensional. We smile at the satirical sides, but where's the warmth of human nature, the spark of genius or rebellion? If Star Wars is humanistic, Starship Troopers is totalitarian. And I'm like, yeah, and that's the point. It kind of goes back to it's like the Stanley Kubrick quote where it's like, well, the people who critiqued like Jack Nicholson's performance in The Shining, it's like, well, just because you didn't like it doesn't mean it wasn't my intent. And that's the thing, is that like, that's the point of all this. Just because you couldn't realize it doesn't make it an inferior film.
I also take issue with the Ebert, that Ebert quote you read, the part saying, where is the warmth of humanity? I don't think at any point in this movie we're supposed to be rooting for the humans, and that's exemplified by the final scene when Neil Patrick Harris says it's afraid and everybody cheers and fires their guns. We should be fully against the humans at the end of the movie.
But that's the thing though, is that like Johnny Rico is our protagonist, and we see his slow descent into just being consumed by the machine. He goes from this kid who has choice, the fact that he wants to choose between, like he wants his girl, he wants to be with his girlfriend. He sits there, like he has parents that obviously he has a very lavish, rich lifestyle. He's going to go to Harvard, but he chooses military service because he wants to pursue a very humanistic thing. Like he wants to pursue romance. And then Carmen, very early on in the film, is consumed by this. And so he's disillusioned to the point where like he's kind of half-heartedly going through this until they blow up or they destroy Buenos Aires. And then it's this bloodlust that continues him for most of the kind of perpetuates like his forward momentum for all of his choices. And then by the end of the film, he is very much a cog in the machine. There is no more human nature to his character.
Yeah, he becomes part of the propaganda. Yeah.
Exactly, like literally. And then it's the whole, I think about his final scene in the movie is you want to live forever? And that's the thing. He is part of the machine now. He goes from the very beginning of the film being a student of Michael Ironside's, pushing against his beliefs and what he's trying to indoctrinate the students with, to, like you said, he is part of the indoctrination now. And that's what it is. And like to not, I get that, like that's not something you can pick up on your first viewing of this. And to get to Ebert's thing about like, oh, like all you have in this film is like bombastic nature of violence and murdering bugs. And yes, that is the hook. That is the selling point of the film. Like any good satire, that you need a hook and an angle. Satire by itself is not a good marketing angle.
Sure.
And you need that bombast to hook the normies in. And then once they watch it, you hope that at least one person's like, oh, I get it now. And it's a shame that how someone like Roger Ebert, who's considered probably up there with, like, God, maybe only second to Pauline Kael when it comes to just film criticism in general, was not able to get that at the time. And I don't know if you'd have to go back and look at some of Ebert's other books from the 2000s to see if he ever reevaluated this film. But it's a shame that someone even like him could not kind of see the forest of the trees when it came to Starship Troopers.
Well, I don't know. I like if you're saying Ebert gave it a 2 out of 4, like to me that sounds like he pretty much loved it. But like,
Ebert, trust me, there are movies that Ebert liked. Like Ebert was always weird. Like back when he still had his, like when he didn't like lose his ability to talk. Ebert was always an anomaly because like he'd appreciate certain things. Rob probably can tell you the story about like his like hatred of David Lynch.
Oh yeah,
and how like he went like God, he was on the soapbox to end all soapboxes when it came to like Blue Velvet and Isabella Rossellini and her treatment in the film.
Look what they made her do.
Yes. And then like you go to like Mulholland Drive and he thought Mulholland Drive was like nothing sort of a masterpiece.
I mean, it's so surprising when you think about his own involvement in film. If you like, you know, there's a lot
Valley of the Dolls,
just stuff that features. I mean, and I'm not passing on any judgment on that stuff whatsoever. I don't think that like anybody should tell people what to write and what not to write. But you know, there's a lot of movies with graphic violence and rape scenes that Ebert was involved with over the years, like before he became a well-renowned film critic. And it's just interesting to see these. I mean, it's hard to judge somebody. Like, it's one of those things people like to do now. It's like, oh, look what you said in the 70s. Like, let's dig that up now. But like, you know, obviously, like back before Twitter and all that, you were allowed to like grow and progress and change as a human, and like they sort of accepted the current version of you as who you were, which is obviously not something that happens anymore. And I would be ashamed. I would hate to see Roger Ebert in his sort of final years right now rather than when that took place. You know what I mean? Because I mean, somebody would have some bullshit to say to him. That would, but I think he's more than smart enough to understand that having a warm, wholesome human character connection is not the point of this movie. I like, it's so hard to understand, but like maybe he's just knows who his film criticism audience is, and he's trying to direct the average family as to what they should watch. I don't know.
Sure. But that's the thing, though. It's like I think it's like any good satire. Like it takes time for it to be appreciated. Yes. I don't think anything just kind of comes like anything that's worth watching. It's kind of like we talk about with a lot of movies. Like again, not to go back to Kubrick, but like there's a reason why when most of his films were released, they were initially like I don't want to say divisive, but like most people were kind of like, what? Like, what are we supposed to make of this? And then, like, it took 20 or 30 years later for people to be like, oh, 2001 is the greatest science fiction film that will ever be made. And it just takes time for these things to gel. But that also gets, like, back to my point about Evil Dead 2. And I know, Chris, obviously there's a little bit of, like, a cultural divide between the two of us, even though there's, like, what, maybe only a couple hundred miles between us. It's the thing of, like, it's just interesting that, like, Starship Troopers, even though it's available at Walmart right now in New York State, I still feel that, like, most people have not seen this movie. Like, it's the idea that like oh god, like I think Rob and I were talking about it. It's like most people are aware of like Evil Dead 2 and Bruce Campbell like squatting up and down to like the deer head laughing at him. Like on Halloween night, like there's a drive-in by me, Rob knows where it is, on Overlook, and like they were playing Evil Dead 2 on Halloween night. I don't see them, like, especially now with everything with COVID, like a lot of like older movies are getting a second life on the big screen, quote unquote, because of this. But like, I can't see theaters putting Starship Troopers back into theaters. Whereas I could very easily see Evil Dead 2 being put back into theaters. Like, there's that same thing where I still don't think people have firmly, like, outside of film criticism circles, have truly appreciate this film for the masterpiece that it is. Like, it baffles me that like 2 years later, The Matrix becomes this like larger than life cultural phenomena, yet Starship Troopers for the most part was ignored in 1997.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And Starship Troopers is not without its own impressive technical achievements as well. You know, like, I mean, like just to briefly touch on the effects, like, for 1997, some of these CGI bugs look fantastic, and it has held up really well. Like, especially there's a scene where a bunch of the standard sort of warrior bugs attack this fort out in the desert, and like you just see this field of them. And the animation, like, I was really expecting to be laughing at it when I watched this movie the last time, but like it's held up really well. And I mean, of course, you have this thing where the close-ups are practical effects, but like some of the wide CGI shots where you see hundreds of bugs still look really good.
But like, that's the thing about this movie though that's fascinating. It's like it's made in like 95, 96. And it was that time period where like it's probably the last great practical effects, like special effects movie, because you have Jurassic Park that came out a few years earlier, and yet you still didn't have practical effects being phased out. So it's really like I cannot think of a better film that blends practical and special effects as well as this film has. Because like you said, we're 23, 24 years later. And I would say this film, I cannot think of another film from the 1990s that the special effects hold up as well. Like, you look at this to bring it back also to The Matrix. Like, you look at The Matrix, like there's moments in that where it doesn't hold up. Yet you look at this, and there's really nothing. It's probably maybe a handful of moments here or there, but like as a whole, I don't think there's a single special effect in this film that doesn't hold up by today's standards.
I mean, the benefit, obviously the main benefit the original Matrix has is they developed a remarkable practical shooting technique for bullet time that they later pretty much just animated in the two sequels, and I think that for that reason, the first one. It's like with the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Like, some of the scenes where it's a fully animated person just are laughable by today's standards, and you have that big time in The Matrix Reloaded. But like the first movie kind of skirted that by like though we've all seen the behind the scenes photos of those camera rigs with like 100 cameras in a circle that they set up for the first Matrix movie, and like that because they like, can you imagine just the idea of literally setting up a physical preposterous camera rig to pull off something like that is like so beyond anything that any production does anymore. Like, that's like such a like Rube Goldberg ludicrous concept to do something like that. Whereas now it's like, we'll make a volume and we'll just do whatever we want all the time. And, but like when's the last example of something like that? That's probably it. Right. And then, like, so I think that one holds up pretty good, and I think that's what everyone remembers from that movie. If you're a basic person who's not looking at it on an ideological level, you remember the bullet time scenes, and that's what everything parodied for like 8 years straight.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing too. Again, like, not to sit there bring us back to like 90s cinema at large, but like, it's weird to think about that. Like, you have like kind of all these like science fiction gems of the 90s, like Total Recall, Starship Troopers, The Matrix. Like, there's probably a couple other ones that like I really don't want to include Jurassic Park, because that's really not science fiction-y. It's more action adventure. But you have kind of all these films, and I'm just trying to figure out, why is it that like The Matrix would resonate so much more with mass audiences over Starship Troopers, and you're only talking about like 18 months between their releases?
Well, I think that it's like, if you like, I think the short answer is that exactly what Roger Ebert was touching on. The general audience wants to believe that the film is being taken seriously and that they can actually try and empathize with the characters, and like Starship Troopers doesn't really want you to do that. The Matrix does.
I also think that, I agree with that, Chris. I also think that, we can't there's a disjointedness between the audience and our main characters in Starship Troopers, because in Starship Troopers it's like, oh, they're soldiers, and you know, I don't think you really see Starship Troopers and you'd be like, yeah, I want to be a soldier. You watch The Matrix and you want to be like, and you say, oh, that's badass. I want to be Keanu Reeves with the sunglasses, with the long jacket and flipping around and stuff like that. It's almost like it's something we hadn't seen before, where we've seen soldiers in army suits with guns before.
Well, and also Keanu Reeves is like the audience's window into the story. Like he's like and the everyman who gets pulled into the story, right? And like Starship Troopers, like who relates to Johnny Rico, like of the audience? Like I don't know, like
raise his hand. Raise his hand.
Well, but you know,
I think that's the thing too. We got
fully cynical. I don't think it's completely
young straight white men identify with Johnny Rico because Denise Richards is gorgeous. That's the audience surrogate. They all want to date Denise Richards.
And I also contend that Michael Ironside's character is kind of a good guy. Like I don't think he's like actually thoroughly trying to indoctrinate the students.
But yes, that's the thing that's interesting about this movie, is that there's so many layers. You could pretty much take every scene of this movie and discuss it on a philosophical level, which I really can't think of another film, maybe other than, again, 2001, if we're staying within like this science fiction like pantheon. Because like take the sequence when we're first introduced to Michael Ironside, like in the classroom. And it's like you have the one girl raise her hand, like when Michael Ironside's like going through his entire thing about like, oh, like what's he say? Like naked brute like force has solved all like conflicts in their most efficient way possible.
Yep.
And then you have like the one girl raise her hand. She's like, my mother said violence doesn't solve anything. And he's like, what would the town like founders or the town fathers of Hiroshima say about that? And Denise Richards like raises her hand. She's like, they wouldn't say anything. They're dead.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my God, it's great. Like, it's like, Rob, please insert that clip here.
Let's sum up. This year we explored the failure of democracy, how the social scientists brought our world to the brink of chaos. We talked about the veterans, how they took control and imposed the stability that has lasted for generations since. You know these facts, but have I taught you anything of value this year? Why are only citizens allowed to vote?
It's a reward. What the Federation gives you for doing federal service.
No. Something given has no value. Look, when you vote, you are exercising political authority. You're using force. And force, my friends, is violence. The supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
My mother always said violence never solves anything.
Really? I wonder what the city fathers of Hiroshima would say about that. You.
They probably wouldn't say anything. Hiroshima was destroyed.
Correct. Naked force has resolved more issues throughout history than any other factor. The contrary opinion, that violence never solves anything, is wishful thinking at its worst. People who forget that always pay. Rico, what's the moral difference, if any, between a civilian and a citizen?
A citizen accepts personal responsibility for the safety of the body politic, defending it with his life. A civilian does not.
The exact words of the text. But do you understand it? Do you believe it?
I don't know.
Of course you don't. I doubt anyone here would recognize civic virtue if it reached up and bit you in the ass.
I love every time we get a classroom scene, whether it be Michael Ironside or the wonderful blind Rue McClanahan in this movie. They're just discussing something that is so like over the top, and you know, even Rue McClanahan's, to get to that, she's the biology teacher or bug anatomy teacher, whatever it is, and she's giving the speech about like how the bugs, you know, are like they can colonize planets and spread themselves by sending their spores into space. And it's like everything she's saying you can attribute to humans as well. Like, what do you think humans are doing? They're sending all their children out to space to kill the bugs and colonize. Well, and I love all that stuff.
Oh, come on, it's just a bug. You better put your goggles on.
Just a bug. We humans like to think we are nature's finest achievement. I'm afraid it just isn't true. This archaic sand beetle is superior in many ways. It reproduces in vast numbers. Has no ego, has no fear, doesn't know about death, and so is the perfect selfless member of society.
But humans have created art, mathematics, and interstellar travel.
True, but before you let that go to your head, take the example of the arachnids, a highly evolved insect society. By human standards, they are relatively stupid. But their evolution stretches over millions of years. And now,
Here, take this.
they can colonize planets by hurling their spore into space.
I mean, she's like there's more real science in her brief explanation than this movie gets credit for. She's really just explaining like why like evolution can make a life form extremely successful even if they're not technologically advanced, right? It's like why are trees and birds and flies so pervasive, right? It's pretty much the same thing. It's like survival is the one key to success, and that's everything else sort of follows from that, right? And Michael Ironside, like Johnny's dad sort of throws out that, oh, what's this guy doing setting up a recruiting center in the school? That should be illegal. But you know, when Rico answers like what it means to be a citizen and sort of I think what Ironside says is that you gave the textbook definition of what it means to be a citizen, but do you understand what that means? And that's sort of the end of that scene. And then, you know, Rico catches up with Mr. Ratchek later in the movie at this the graduation dance, I think it is, and he's sort of like, he goes up to him and he's like, you know, I'm really thinking about enlisting. And it's like he's almost seeking this guy's approval, as like he just looks up to this guy and he seems like he knows what he's talking about. And he asks him his advice whether he should sign up or not. And he tells him, he tells Rico that figuring things out for yourselves is the only freedom we really have. And he's like, I don't want to say anything to you about that. And so he's not like, he's probably the most enlightened character in the movie. And he's not really like pushing it as hard as when you have Johnny's dad accusing him of turning it into a recruiting center, that's how you know that's not what's happening.
But I think that's the thing though about Michael Ironside's character, is that like he's so deep in the machine that he doesn't know which way. So I think he's a school teacher. In the moment things flare up, he's right back in the thick of it. Like it's kind of like the discussion of like Batman versus Bruce Wayne. It's like, who is the alter ego? And usually the consensus is Batman's the person and Bruce Wayne's the alter ego. And I think that's the same to be said for Michael Ironside's characters. Like he's a school teacher. In the moment like things flare up, it's what also happens with Johnny Rico, they immediately go right back into the thick of it. And I think
you can look at it as
I don't think Michael Ironside's character is purposefully doing indoctrination. It's just that he's a cog in the machine. Like, does he have his moments where his humanity kind of peaks out, like where he tells Johnny, like, oh, like the freedom of choice is really the only freedom that we have at the end of the day. And like, no, I think it does peak out, but for the most part, everybody in this film is a cog in the machine, except for people like Johnny's parents. Because like it's interesting that like we're really not introduced to anybody else's parents. Like we never see Denise Richards' parents. We never see really any other adult characters
except for the awesome part where come on, I want to reference that doctor show that Neil Patrick Harris does. Come on, what's the guy's name? So when Doogie Howser psychically forces his ferret to go attack his mom, that's the one other parent we hear. But that's all we
don't you don't even see them though. Like think about it. It could be very easily they could have shot a sequence of the ferret like going up his mother's leg, and they chose not to.
It was like, funnier that way.
Well, it is funnier too, but like I think there's a reason why. I think there's a reason why we really are only like adult characters are the ones that we see, because it's purposely being that way. Like you have think about it. Michael Ironside basically becomes the father surrogate for Johnny Rico. And that's the thing, is that in totalitarianism, the state is the father figure, not the parents. The state is the one that basically is the teat from which everybody sucks from. And that's the thing too that I think is fascinating that this film does not get credit for, is that you do have like these instances where we do get to see the really big machinations of the government. And it's really not to the very end that we get to see Johnny's only real human interaction with them. And that's with Neil Patrick Harris's character. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, Neil Patrick Harris's character goes from being like the goofy, fun sidekick, I guess maybe sidekick. I don't know. He's kind of like the most jovial character in the first, 20, 30 minutes of the film. He's absent for 3/4 of it. And he shows up by the end. And he's really the only character that we see that's been genuinely beat down psychologically by the events of the film. And we don't even see his character arc. It's more just alluded to in his performance in the last 20 minutes of the film.
Oh yeah, I love that whole thing that he gets enlisted for military intelligence, and they're like, wow, that's high up, and then we see him in a propaganda film, and then he's basically like the head of the whole operation at the end. I really enjoyed that we didn't see that arc.
He's the head of the SS. Is essentially what his thing is that he's wearing the, oh God, I forget where I read this, but apparently on set they called his character Doogie Himmler.
Yeah, I read that, Doogie Himmler, yeah.
And that's what he is. And you got to give Neil it's kind of a shame that Neil Patrick Harris is going back to being schlocky dancing man. But talk about another actor that knows how to do dramatic acting. And I don't know what Rob's opinion on this is, but he's one of the better parts of Gone Girl with David Fincher. That's because I think his dramatic roles are kind of few and far between. How I Met Your Mother kind of ruined Neil Patrick Harris for dramatic roles, at least for me. But no, he is probably one of the better characters in this. He's definitely one of those things, because I know in '97 I wouldn't have known I didn't know who Neil Patrick Harris was, and that's the thing. You look at all the other characters in this film, the non-adult characters. You're Johnny Rico, Denise Richards, what's his name, Xander Cage. I know I'm making that last part up, but that.
Xander Cage is the Triple X dude, right?
I know. What's his last name?
Hangs out with Tony Hawk, makes videos. Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Xander's last name?
Patrick Muldoon. I don't know his character name.
Oh God, he has a really great fake name in this. Oh God, Xander. Oh God, what's his last name? Somebody, Rob, pull up IMDb real quick.
Barcalow.
Is that his last name?
Lieutenant Xander Barcalow. Barcalow. Barcalow.
It's an equally goofy last name. But no, I think there is that level of all these characters that you really oh God, when it comes to the younger ones, that really Neil Patrick Harris is the only one that feels like he's been influenced by the violence. Because all the other characters, I would say, are almost practically desensitized to it.
Sure. I could see that. And I think, we see with Neil Patrick Harris that I think it hits harder that we don't see his arc, because then when he has that transition into being, so steeped in the military intelligence and this war that they're having, it's like he's another one of the teachers, like a Michael Ironside or Rue McClanahan or Clancy Brown. He's another cog in that machine, and we just can accept that because the movie set it up so perfectly.
Yes. All right, so what else do we want to talk about from this film? Because I feel like I've done a lot of just more philosophical musings, but I imagine there's certain scenes we want to delve into.
On the topic of, I think we were just saying, and you mentioned earlier, Zach, that we kind of have this this wooden acting of our, say, Casper Van Dien, Denise Richards, Jake Busey, I guess, would fall into that category, Patrick Muldoon. I love the fact that all of our cogs in the machine, as I guess we're calling them, like our Ironside and our Clancy Brown, I don't see that as wooden acting. I see that as, representing exactly what the military-industrial complex of this movie is. And I like that kind of, reflection or juxtaposition between our younger characters and our older characters. And I think that's another thing that people really didn't get back in the day in '97, where they're like, oh man, some of this acting is so bad. Why does it start like Beverly Hills 90210? But once again, that's the point, I think.
Well, that's the thing. You read the stories that apparently Paul Verhoeven wanted 15-year-olds.
Yes.
And I would absolutely love to see that. I want that so badly. If you could go around and just cast a bunch of teenage actors, I get that would be almost impossible just because of trying to find good teenage actors would be next to impossible to find. But I think that's one of those instances where I'd be like, oh, you could have made this movie just a little bit better, just a little bit better. Because if you actually, because I know Casper Van Dien was 28, 29 when he was making this.
Yeah, I think most of them are mid to late 20s. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that would just sold it even better if you got teenage actors, or at least teenage actors. I'm sorry, actors in their early 20s that looked like they were teenagers.
Yeah. We almost, he gets at that a little bit with the when Casper Van Dien takes over the Roughnecks and all the young people get sent to him, and he's like, "Who's all the kids?" I don't know how old any of those actors actually are, but they definitely look significantly younger than anybody else in the cast.
Yeah, but that's easy because that's just extras.
Sure,
that's an easy enough one to do.
Yeah, and it's and it makes sense because it's the war. They need everybody they can get. Like Jake Busey says, they're fresh out of boot. All that stuff.
I do want to point out that anytime I've ever watched this, I've watched this with a couple groups of people for the first time, and it's something they always comment on. It's like, who are all these 30-somethings playing teenagers? It's almost like a joke about the movie in a way. You just don't believe it, especially with Casper Van Dien. With Mr. Xander Cage doesn't look like a spring chicken either. That guy looks like he's probably 42 years old or something. I don't know. It doesn't really work, but I think that's part of the maybe unintentional brilliance too. Is you cast actors that look like glam models, they're older, and it creates this weird sort of just surrealistic nature to the high school. Where this almost could be it's where does the line of the propaganda blend and blur into the narrative of the film versus the little vignettes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the reason why this film works so well. It's I know now Verhoeven says when he does Q&As regarding this film, it's oh, we deliberately casted actors that didn't act so well but looked like cardboard cutouts and 90210 actors because that's the thing we were going for. I don't think so. Because, everybody, yeah, wouldn't you love to believe that? But I just don't.
I don't. But I think that's maybe, again, it's one of those times where we backed into brilliance by accident, or it's by casting these actors, because it's like Neil Patrick Harris, we've learned can act. We've learned Denise Richards cannot act, and Casper Van Dien's kind of a glorified TV actor right now, or he was. I don't know what he's been up to lately.
Well, who could forget about the classic direct-to-video Starship Troopers 3?
What was it? Marauders of the Federation? No. Second one's Heroes of the Federation. Is the third one just Marauders?
The whole direct-to-video sequels of Starship Troopers with a animated one that is soon to be released, if not already, is all just a big pile of sadness. I don't know. It's just why, how, why, how, why, how. I don't know.
Oh my god. I would love to make a new Starship Troopers, and I want to take the cast of Sony's Spider-Man series and make a Starship Troopers movie with them. I would love to do that. Please. Tom Holland, Johnny Rico, Zendaya. I guess she'd be dizzy. I don't know who would play Denise Richards. I just give it to me. Just
Sydney
give
Sweeney.
It to me. Sydney Sweeney could be perfect.
Yes.
I just don't think they could do it. I have so little faith in the machine these days. I think that if they tried now, 1997 Starship Troopers, the social commentary would actually look subtle in comparison to what they would do now. It'd be so heavy-handed because now it would people know how dumb the audience is.
But that's I think if they made this today, it would be the exact opposite of that. I think you would have to do it deliberately poking it more the overly where the original novel in the film is it's too far right. I think now if you made a Total Recall, you have to make it too far left. The fact that how liberal ideology has kind of ruined the military, and how you have all these kind of ridiculous rules of engagement. I think you would have to do it that way if you're going to do a new Total Recall.
What a beautiful description of a movie that will never be made.
That's what I mean. I think you could do another Total Recall. It would be you could easily remake this, but you'd have to spin it from a different direction. And I think it could be done. You just, again, it's nothing short of a miracle that Paul Verhoeven was given a 9-figure budget. And 2, that will never happen again, especially after how the Total Recall remake from 2012. Has anyone here ever seen that? Colin Farrell Total Recall?
I refuse to watch it.
No,
it's bad. I saw it once. It's the definite, other than having maybe one good action sequence, it is out and out bad. It's just oh, it's more faithful to the Philip K. Dick story. It's yeah, but you forgot to make a good movie in the process.
Well, it is remarkable that this ever happened. I caught the first half hour of it before we talked, and we're recording a little early today. Peek behind the curtains there, but I just even the scene in the recruitment center, there's probably 300 extras like when they walk into that airport, and it's just like you can just see the money on screen. It's really great. And like a lot, like there's a lot of the spaceship action, like, oh man, there's like, it's a great combination of practical models from ILM and CGI.
Although they made like half a dozen 18-foot long like Star Cruisers. Like that's I don't care. Again, we all make fun of it, especially Chris and I, when it comes to Star Wars, like real sets, practical effects. But that's never going to happen again. Well, you're never going to have that much practical effects in a movie on this scale ever again.
And well, this is like, I mean, this is right up there with like sort of what was going on with Phantom Menace, right? Like everybody jokes about the prequels having so much CGI, but there's more miniatures and models in Phantom Menace than any movie ever made. And it's like, it's the same guys working on these things. There's a big overlap, right? And it's just sort of like, and the reason is because the CGI still kind of looked like video games in certain respects, and like they didn't think it was convincing enough to do it fully that way. And also, if you have a ship on that scale with all these, with that much geometry and lights, like I don't know, were the computers up to the task to doing it properly? Probably not.
Like that's so, but like that's what they said though. Like when it came to what's Denise Richards and Xander Cage's starship called? I forget what its name is.
Oh, the
Ethan Allen. It has some name like that.
I think I want to say Ron Jeremy, but that's not it. I think Ron is in it, which is why I'm thinking of that.
That's great. We start naming our military vessels after porn stars. Like that would be great. Like oh god, like oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, because they say it when it goes down. Like Jake Busey's like, oh, the Ron John is down or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember.
But like when it gets split in half, like during that final battle, like one of the behind the scenes thing, like I watched, they say like, oh, it would have taken too much time with the computer to do this. Like, so they deliberately like took a model, like deliberately built it so it would be like not broke, but like it would be filmed so it would be broken in half. And they did all of that. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like just realizing like how like, okay, it would be more convincing to do this because it's weird. Like not that they didn't trust the special effects, but it was like, okay, like sure, we could bet our hand on the digital effects, but we don't know what that's going to be like at the end of the day. So let's just know we know is trusted and true.
You got to factor in the 2 months to render 5 or 6 frames back then, right? So like
exactly.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I get it. It's more expensive, and you can't like obviously like farm these things over to like Asian countries for it to be done en masse. But like I just don't get it though, with this weird infatuation that we have with the narrative of real sets, practical effects. It's like nobody is stopping them from doing this with modern films. They're choosing not to. It's kind of like what Lucas did, like, and just to use him because he's the punching bag for all this stuff. Is it like, think about it, like the reason why digital effects became so pervasive in the culture of Hollywood was because they wanted to do it. Like nobody forced them to pull away from that, from practical effects.
Well, I mean, it's commercialism and kind of not as good as everyone says, but I'd be remiss to not point out that the first episode of Disney Galleries, The Mandalorian season 2 has come out, and you do see a rather beautiful, I think 4-foot model of Moff Gideon's Star Destroyer, which was the primary representation of it on screen. And I must admit, when I saw it, that's what I thought it was, and I turned out to be correct. So there's still enough visual cues left over that I either thought they were doing a very good job to trick me that it was a model, or it actually was.
But like, okay, and not to bring this back to Star Wars, but as Rob knows, everything comes back to Star Wars when it comes to Hollywood. It's like, even like, I remember before Mandalorian season 1 started, that they had like, I think it was either Celebration or Comic-Con. They had like the Razor Crest, and they showed how like they shot it from like different angles and like did all the composite shots. But like, that's the thing though now, is that like they're only doing that so on the press tour they can point to it. Well, like that's the reason why they're doing it.
My point of bringing that up, though, is that what it was translated to the screen. Like, it's not that I couldn't tell the difference. I could, and I thought it looked great. That's what I'm saying. But
it comes down to what's it going to look like 20 years from now. Like, that's my issue, is that, like, how much of this is going to really matter? Like, it's like with special effects now, I think there's a Robert Zemeckis quote somewhere, like when he was making Beowulf, where he, like, told the writers of that film that, like, go nuts. And they're like, what? He's like, there's nothing that you can't write that I can't do for $1 million a minute. And, like, that's the thing now, is that, like, can they do this stuff? Like, real sets, practical effects, and will it look convincing? Sure. But at the same time, also, it's like, why? It's like they're only doing it so they can point to it later on.
I don't know.
I think that's where it comes down to.
I don't like you're talking about Beowulf. Like that's getting on in years. I mean, it's probably a tough watch now. I'm saying, like, you know, but I notoriously, like, I thoroughly dislike the MCU, and when I see little glimpses of those movies, it looks like cartoon characters jumping around to me, and have this whole floating head syndrome where you see old man Downey Jr.'s head just floating on a cartoon character, and it doesn't look like it's even attached to him. And, like, I can't stand that stuff. I don't like it. I don't think it looks real. It takes me right out of it. And I think that maybe you're right that in 20 years from now, will this matter? But there's this other layer to it, and it's part of the reason, and it's upfront stated that it's part of the reason why they did it for those scenes in The Mandalorian. But it's just like it's sort of tying it into the sort of visual lexicon of Star Wars, for example, where it's just like your mind knows that the way things look in this series is like this. Why do you know why it looks that way? No, but if you compare the two properties and watch them back to back, you'll see a sort of continuity there.
Sure, I don't necessarily disagree with that, though. But I think what it comes down to, I know Rob kind of doesn't like it when I go into this, but it's like kind of like intent. Is that, like, when they were making Starship Troopers in 95 and 96, they went to people like Phil Tippett because they're like, okay, this guy is the master of his craft. Like, and that's the reason why they had him do special effects, both practical and some digital. And I think nowadays they're not doing that. Like, think about it, there is no Phil Tippett of the modern generation. There just isn't. There isn't somebody, like, think about, like, what was it in Rise of Skywalker? They had the chest scene. They parade him out.
Oh my! I'm so glad. Like, you know, like first of all, like, of course we all love Phil Tippett. I hate. Don't get me wrong. I totally hate Vice, but do yourself a favor and watch the, like, little Vice biopic on him, because it's fascinating. Just him talking about loading up on LSD and then going to work on Return of the Jedi. but I do really detest the way the way that Lucasfilm sort of dusts him off now and then these days for exactly what you're saying, marketing purposes. It's like, oh, he did the chess set for The Force Awakens, and there's literally one background ad in one episode of The Mandalorian that was stop motion, and he tweeted something that his team did that, but it's a blanket kind of thing.
But that's what I mean, though. So I think it comes down to, like, when we see practical effects nowadays, and this is what I was trying to get at with the Robert Zemeckis quote, is that, like, they only, like, special effects now are so cheap that they can do anything with a computer and it doesn't really cost them anything. So, like, yeah, I'm not going to deny, like, doing a real set, like, hiring Phil Tippett's people is probably more expensive than having somebody in an Asian country just devote how many man hours to this. But I think you're only getting those real sets, practical effects moments because they can point to it during the marketing. Like, so they can appease certain fans of a certain age group that just don't understand how the sausage is made. They just eat up the talking points that stupid websites put out there for clicks. And I think that's the thing. Like, if they went out there on The Mandalorian and you had Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, they're like, we did this with a practical effect because we feel that 20 years from now, people will look back at this and it'll be unmistakable that it's a real fact. The problem now is they have all these real facts there just to kind of blend in with the digital imagery. It's kind of like, I remember there was like a promotional thing for Rogue One where they had like John Knowles, and like it's like his entire team like reading YouTube comments for the first Rogue One trailer, and they're like, oh man, I think that's a real like Class 1 Imperial Star Destroyer.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up.
Because I think that's the point. It's like they only do these practical effects now for marketing purposes. Well, they do not do it for the testament of time.
I remember the same clip, and I think it was from a panel that he did with Doug Chang during the celebration that they were talking about the 40th anniversary, and it's like somebody comments that like when they saw that Star Destroyer in Rogue One, they thought it was a model, and he's like, it's not, but it makes me really happy that you thought it was, because like was trying to make it look like one.
And that's what I mean. Like, we've gotten to a point now where with digital effects, we're trying to emulate imperfection. But I get that.
I just brought up the thing with the Mandalorian because if you watch that last episode and you understand that most of what you're seeing with the Star Destroyer is a model, that's not an insignificant 10 frames with Phil Tippett that they can sort of point to. That's it's more substantially used in the production.
But that's what I mean though. But I think it comes down to, once again, the intent of it all. Is that did they that's the thing, do we know, did they make a physical Slave One or a physical prop model of Slave One for the Mandalorian season 2? Do we know that?
I think that would have been in that Disney gallery if they did. But I don't know, something I just believe, and I wouldn't be surprised if John Knoll worked on Starship Troopers. I don't know, but
ILM did work on this, so I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe dabbled in it to some extent.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe he actually likes the craft of model making, because it's something that when he started out, he wasn't doing a ton of that kind of stuff. I think he worked on some of the early Star Trek feature films where they were still using models, but he was done more on the compositing side, and I think he worked on the whole Genesis device sequence, early 3D animation. But I think he sort of actually cares about it and turns it in. He's reviving it, even though he wasn't really a part of it when it got going. And I don't know, I believe that he thinks it's good and is into it. I don't, and he's the motivating force behind all of those practical models we're still seeing on screen, right? On that show.
But that's the thing though. It's I wonder, and again, this is getting really far away from Starship Troopers, so Rob, by all means, rein us in when you want.
John Knoll.
Well, sure, but I think, but it comes down to just the intent of it all. That's my issue. It's kind of how Rob and I talk about Dr. Sleep or Tenet. Is that at the end of the day, the product is the product. You can't argue with what's on the screen. I think it comes down to what was the philosophical choice behind these decisions. But I think it comes down to why are they doing this? Are they doing it because they feel it's there for a reason? But I think it comes down to intent. Because if you did feel a loyalty to real sets, practical effects, I think that should extend to everything. It's kind of the idea that okay, if we're going to commit to that ideology, then let's commit to it. I get it. It's kind of you can't escape CGI. It's a tool. Why not use it? It makes things efficient and much more cost effective. But I think at the end of the day, real set, when you do commit to real sets, practical effects, is the reason why Starship Troopers is still available at a Walmart almost 20 plus years later. I do think that's the reason why these things are still available. Think about it.
It's still bringing in money. It's in print, as they say.
Exactly. At a Walmart, which is the thing that's the most ubiquitous shopping mall in the history of mankind. And I think that's where it matters. Think about it. There was no copies of Star Wars, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker at this Walmart, yet there was a copy of Starship Troopers. And I think the proof is in the pudding in that instance. There's a reason why, even though, again, there was a copy of that, but there wasn't a copy of Evil Dead 2. So maybe Chris has a better understanding of this than I do. I do think that's kind of the point of all of this, is that when you do film, it's kind of how films maybe change the world isn't as direct as my explanation of it isn't as direct as I would have liked it to have been. But I think at the end of the day, there maybe is some inklings of this out there. It's kind of how I think when Rob and I talked about Mandy from a couple of years ago, I keep seeing Mandy at Best Buys, Targets, and Walmarts, yet that film for the most part has kind of dissipated from pop culture. Yet it's still widely available to anyone who wants to seek it out. Or maybe I'm completely off base with this because nobody buys physical media anymore. Maybe that's a wrong gauge to be looking at whether a film is still pervasive in the culture.
Well, I paid for a digital rental of Starship Troopers within the last year, but I'm an exception. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. So who knows? That's the weird thing. The reason why Starship Troopers got 2 direct-to-video sequels was because it was a rental house darling. It was one of those films that just always got rented on Friday and Saturday nights. Yet now, where we used to have kind of those barometers to gauge things by like how many copies were on the shelf at Walmart or Circuit City or whatever. Now we don't have that anymore because all that data is digital. So unless you somehow have access to, I don't know, iTunes, Vudu, Lord knows what else, we're never going to know how pervasive certain films are, other than, I guess, what? The ranking charts on some of these streaming sites, which
how many podcasts there are about it, obviously. But
yeah, and that's a fun thing that Rob and I have talked about a lot over the years, is that like when we look at whether to discuss something, we'll look up like a title and see how many episodes of something are available on like Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all the podcasting platforms.
I guess YouTube is a good reference point as well, but because you can actually see the views there, which is nice.
Sure, and like that's the thing we've joked about. Like when we when we eventually do the Hot Tomorrows episode that comes out in February, it's like nobody talks about that film because it doesn't exist in any sort of meaningful way. And I think that's the thing that's interesting. It's kind of like, oh God, I forget. Like Rob, please, I don't know. I think Rob might have died for this point because the way he's not interjected in all this. But like there was something that him and I were talking about, and we were like, oh, I forget what it was. It was kind of like, I think that's what we were talking about, The Thing versus E.T. And it's like, think about the amount of film discourse there is on E.T. versus The Thing. It's like, sure, like The Thing got clocked in the summer of 1982. But like, if you look at YouTube and podcast, there are infinitely more discussions about The Thing than there will be about E.T. I would imagine it's probably a margin of at least 3-1, worst case scenario 2-1. And I think that just goes to show how much more meaningful a film will be, maybe not at the time of its release, but its resonance in the culture. And I think that's where we are with Starship Troopers now, is that like maybe it did not have its time then. It certainly has its time more now than it ever did in any sort of time in history, but I still don't think it's at the position it should be considering how brilliant this film is.
Well, it's just remarkable that it has to be explained to anyone. That's just, it's just like, that tells you all you need to know, I guess. Like we talked about how you might interpret some of these scenes that are basically like a sledgehammer hitting you over the head. And it's like, it really tells you who we're dealing with. I don't know. What else can you say?
I'm kind of curious how many oh my God. I'm curious how many like YouTube videos there are like Starship Troopers explained. It has to exist, right? Like the question I guess is how many videos versus
how many videos are there of people who like totally don't get it? That'd be interesting to see the dichotomy there.
Okay, these are the titles: Starship Troopers Explored, The Arachnids Explored, The Biology of Arachnids and Starship Troopers Explored, The Brain Bug Explained, Starship Troopers History Explored. Oh my God. Like it just keeps going.
Wow, they're like Star Wars theory videos with like dumb thumbnails and like character deep dives. It's really nothing to do with the point of the story at all.
Hidden Depths of Starship Troopers.
That might have some of it.
Okay, it kind of stops after like once you get to like the 8. Okay, Starship Troopers: How to Make Fascism Sexy. All right,
there's a title that totally implies that they don't get it. That's great.
Yes, Starship Troopers: What's the Difference? 5 brilliant moments in film. I'll take that. And then Warrior Bugs Explained. Oh my God, it's insane. Oh, okay, it keeps getting worse. Somehow it keeps 10 Flaws, Arachnids, Starship Troopers, Strongest Alien Series.
Yeah, like can you imagine that? There's probably an in-universe wiki for this movie that like breaks down all the bug types. It's like, you guys missed this by a country mile if you're even thinking about that. It's just like, right. My God.
The most
Star Trek.
Yeah. And the most profound video on Starship Troopers, no one understands this movie, ... and why, 2 years ago, by PewDiePie.
Oh, God.
Weird to think that PewDiePie might have more influence on the culture when it comes to Starship Troopers than maybe Starship Troopers itself.
He might have told more people about it than saw it in theaters, just based on his free listening audience and the population increase since 1997.
Exactly. Like it's bizarre to think that he might be the greatest spokesman for this film of the last decade. What's the phrase that pays, Rob? Fuck it all.
Fuck it all. No, that was a lot of good points. I wasn't chiming in because I think I forgot I was on this podcast. I was enjoying what you guys were talking about so much. I want to go back, though, to the... I think, Chris, you made a really interesting point that I've never really thought about, that the practical versus CGI in some sense of being, you know, a visual hallmark of a franchise or something. And I know you guys are more steeped in Star Wars than I am, but whenever I hear about like the practical sets versus practical sets versus CGI or anything like that, it's in that Star Wars realm, because kind of, you know, I've always heard of people trying to get back to that originality. Whereas in some franchises, like you mentioned earlier, Chris, The Matrix, you know, they could just digitize that because they just needed it to look crazy and badass and slow motion and things like that. The example that came to my mind, which I know we've talked about before, Zach, with the real effects versus CGI, was the prequel / remake / soft reboot to The Thing, where they did most of the movie with real effects, and then the studio said, let's trash this and let's do CGI. And I think that's where I agree with you, Zach, that they're not really doing this for the test of time. They're doing this because of what they perceive audiences want, at least for movies like that. Star Wars, I think, is something that's a completely different story that you guys covered perfectly.
I so badly want to see that cut of the Thing. The Thing prequel. Like, oh my god, there's bits and pieces out there where you see like some of the motorized animatronic tests and stuff, because Tom Woodruff Jr. has dropped little pieces here and there, like the stuff that guy must be sitting on, like that he can't release. Like, you even have, like, everybody probably remembers that when he released the unused makeup test for the Green Goblin in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where it was like,
oh, it's beautiful.
Just like the treasure trove of stuff that guy must have. But you know, it's so hard to believe it was done. It was basically a locked picture with practical effects for the most part, and they painted over all of it. And whether that was like, we're led to believe that people in charge thought it looked kind of fake, I guess. I don't know, but it'd be like, that's out there somewhere. So much like Star Tours, hopefully we get it Detours, hopefully we get it someday.
But I think that kind of goes back to the point of what I'm saying, though, is that like it comes back to intent. And that, like with Starship Troopers, when they were deciding on like the visual effects houses that would work on the film, they weren't thinking of the audience's perception. And I think that goes back to even a larger issue with Hollywood now, is that like the market research controls infinitely more than we're ever possibly aware of, especially now in the age of data mining. Like, I just think like they're making these decisions. I would imagine that when it came to like doing Moff Gideon's cruiser, I think it probably was a market research decision how that was done. I don't think it was a creative decision. And I think that's the scary part of filmmaking now, is that you do not have creative decisions happening anymore. You have market research decisions.
You know, like maybe you're right with that one, but if you look at, like, I'm not cynical enough to believe that the way the initial sort of John Knoll using a physical model of the Razor Crest for filming, the way that's presented, if that is like a complete fabrication of the facts, I need to, like, I don't know, like, it's going to affect me.
How's the saying go? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Yep.
And that's kind of what's happening right now. Is that, like,
I mean, it's really made up to look like John Knoll didn't tell anyone he was working on this motion control rig at his house for like 2 months till it was ready to test out. I mean, I don't know.
Chris, even I could hear the skepticism in your voice as you said that. I could hear it.
I don't know. Like, that guy's actually kind of a genius, though. Like, he pretty much invented Photoshop.
Yes,
like,
he's a genuine genius. He's a genius. And again, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist.
He also pitched the story treatment for what has been voted by the most knowledgeable and informed people, the fans, to be the best Disney era Star Wars movie. So,
and also the lowest grossing Star Wars film of the Disney era.
I mean, like you know what? Like, I'm in that filthy casual pool where I think that's probably the best movie they've done so far. But
it is. Objectively speaking, it's the most, what's the word, well-rounded in the sense that like it's audacious but also safe at the same time.
Yep, and I'm not willing to believe that John Knoll would lie to me like that.
You're telling me the guy that's worked in this soulless, crass business for his entire life has not been absorbed by the machine?
Yeah,
maybe
but
John. Okay, hold on a sec. I got a great idea. Let's do a new Starship Troopers, but it's in the Hollywood visual effects industry, and John Knoll is Johnny Rico.
Like that guy's life story is insane, man.
I know, just like Johnny Rico. He goes from being like a wealthy, privileged guy in Buenos Aires, has a beautiful girlfriend that won't sleep with him, and then he goes off to the military to be with her. She sends him a Dear John CD-ROM.
It's not at all like that. In the John Knoll story, Denise Richards is working at Lucasfilm and ILM, and he gets the girl instead of her falling in love with Xander Cage. So like it's totally different. You know what I mean? Like he forced his way in there, like as a kid, calling them up and like demanding a tour. Like, you know, it's just like I think he actually wanted to do that because we're talking about a guy who was, you know, you've all seen the behind the scenes from the prequels where he's like on set with his little sphere where he can get the lighting reference from all the different angles in the mirror and all that, and like he was involved in like a lot of model making, then compositing on the earlier Star Trek movies. Like doing that kind of model work is like kind of in his wheelhouse, considering everything technical possible is in his wheelhouse, right? So like I believe he genuinely wanted to do it, and I think that there was a chance that it would have not looked. It could have been a scenario with the Thing prequel where like somebody up high like could have watched that model shot of the Razor Crest and said, yeah, we're gonna definitely take a hard pass on that. I think that was totally possible that could have happened.
Like I said, this is a conversation best left for a certain Star Wars podcast that everybody on the call is involved with.
Yeah, you definitely need Zanger's opinion on this.
Zanger can give his 2-bit opinion wearing a Star Wars helmet. One of his like half a dozen. Okay, not to change the topic, but back to Starship Troopers. There's a sequence in this that's always bothered me, and I've always been fascinated by it. I didn't think about it until today, in preparation for this discussion. When Denise Richards, whose character's name, Carmen, that's her name, Carmen. When Carmen sends Johnny the Dear John letter or CD-ROM, if you look at that, it changes halfway through.
Oh yeah, there's an edit. Yeah, when she goes to like look at Jupiter or something, right?
Yes, and her outfit changes and everything. So my question is, was that a continuity error, or what goes on in the context of the film where she goes to being firmly in love with him to like, I'm not feeling this anymore?
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I definitely noticed the edit, but I was just kind of like, I didn't think too much of it.
Like, imagine sending somebody like a letter in the military being like, oh, I can't wait to be with you, blah, blah, blah. And then like halfway through page 3, you're like, you know what? I don't see this going anywhere anymore.
I think there's a story answer that makes a lot of sense, which is just that, like, you know, like people, Roger Ebert says, oh, they weren't paying attention to the science in this movie at all. Well, in some regards they were, and like these video postcards is one of them, because of course, like you can't have a live call over those distances. Like it's just, you can't even have a live call with Mars from here at light speed signal travel, right? So it seems like to me like it's kind of one of those things where you make a message, it gets banked, and at some time of the month they're all sent off at once. So like you might have.
Oh, so that's what you think. You think that the thing was banking all the messages. And that's what. Oh,
mail only happens like once a month, so whatever gets recorded in that month gets sent in one go. I could see that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, so it's more just kind of like slightly jarring editing than more than anything else.
They shouldn't assume that the people who think this movie is about pro-fascism would be able to figure that out.
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, mail doesn't just flow freely. It's relegated to certain times of the.
They gotta use. Yeah, they can't fill up those important military channels with girlfriends and boyfriends emailing each other all the time.
CD-ROM mailing each other.
Yeah.
I like the idea of mailing somebody a CD-ROM they have to put into their computer and watch. I like that.
You got 700 megabytes. You better use all of it.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. That at some point, some guy burned that in some office on that ship just to hand it to him rather than send it down to his computer. That was really interesting.
Oh my God. Okay, another question when it comes to the dynamic between Johnny and Carmen. I know at one point I think him and Neil Patrick Harris are talking like, "Oh, have you done anything yet?" He's like, "Tonight," and like it's like, do Carmen and Johnny like get to it? Because they make a point that like when he's with Dizzy in the tent that's his first time, and I'm like,
"Oh, they do." It's she at the end of the dance, she whispers to him, "My father's not home tonight," and then it sort of slowly fades out. So I think
that's what. But like in a movie where we get like what top nudity,
yeah, but it's
weird that like there's really no sex scenes in this. Like it's weird how like sex is kind of just like there is set dressing and not there for like any sort of like that's the other thing too. That like I know a lot of people like I think Rob already mentioned it like the shower sequence, like it's nudity, but it doesn't feel like exploitative in the like it is it's exploitative, but it's not in the way that we're usually used to.
But
like
I mean,
I
don't think it's ever been so obvious to me which people's contracts specified for nudity and which didn't. So, and I think that's what you're getting at when it comes to the whole that transition with Denise Richards at the end of the dance.
Yeah,
it's just like we're not even going to get anywhere near that. So we'll get back to you later. But I think
there's always silhouettes. You can always film things in silhouettes, Chris.
Yeah,
use a body double.
Yeah, I guess they like I don't know. I think if it's not implied there, then what is implied though? You know, I think it's supposed to think it had happened there.
But like that's the thing though, because like later in the film, where like oh god, this is like what after they take what part of what was it the planet not take Planet P, but like they're on the outpost, and Michael Ironside's like demanding that he's like it's an order, you must have fun.
Yep.
And like he goes up to Johnny, he's like Johnny, don't let a good thing pass, and then obviously him and Dizzy like go into the tent together, but like how they play that off like much more innocently than you'd expect them to.
Definitely than I would expect him to, and that might be the most, innocent. I don't know if that's exactly the right word, but maybe most tame sex scene that Paul Verhoeven's ever done. maybe most intimate, because you think of Showgirls and you think of the flailing around with Kyle MacLachlan and Elizabeth Berkley.
Rob, that is not a sex scene. There's no sex scenes in Showgirls.
I don't know how you guys have sex. That's a real sex scene right there. You got the ice pick sex stuff in Basic Instinct. You got, from what I've read about Elle, that's a pretty raunchy one. But then this is actually like, when Johnny Rico stops her from taking the shirt off and it's covering her eyes and he's like teasing her, it's like, that's more intimate maybe than I've ever seen from Paul Verhoeven. And that's where that stands out.
That's what I mean though. So like those are the sort of moments for like, they make fun of like this movie for not having any of those like humanistic elements. Like it maybe has some of the more of those elements that we're used to in Paul Verhoeven films. Because there's no moment like that in Total Recall. Like there is no moment like that in RoboCop. Like that's what I mean. Like this might be his most like human film. Like think about it. Like I know everyone complains about these like not being human characters, but like they kind of are. Like Johnny Rico feels like the most fleshed out, realistic character in any of like Chris mentioned in like Paul Verhoeven's filmography with like a capital like PV.
Yeah, and I think that's getting back to what you were saying about how, we're watching him descend into the war mindset and the propaganda machine, where we get throughout the movie, he still has those kernels of humanity in him, whether it be at the beginning, like you mentioned, Chris, Michael Ironside says, you quoted the text, but do you believe it? And Johnny Rico's like, well, I don't know yet. And then the sex scene and the stuff where he cares about, his family in Buenos Aires, like you see those kernels of humanity as he's going through the machinations of this war, and that I think that's purposeful.
And I think that's the thing at the end too, like with Johnny Rico is that like think about it during that like attack on like the fort base, and Michael Ironside is like bisected, Dizzy is impaled like through her abdomen. And think about that. Like at those two moments, he loses his father figure and his girlfriend. Yep. And his immediate action after all this has happened is, I want the whole planet nuked.
Yes.
And it's like that. And at that moment, Johnny Rico, for the most part, has lost his humanity. Like
Absolutely.
think about it, like he's lost really the only two like shreds of humanity he has left. And it's like, okay, no more. Like enough. And I think, and then like even like afterwards, he sees Denise Richards, and there isn't any sort of like reunion. Like he realizes it's her, and he's not even like she doesn't even cross his mind in the sense of like as a romantic partner.
Yeah, I love that in the getaway spaceship where he's just like, we need to nuke this planet, like he's still in war mode, and Denise Richards is looking at, like, takes her helmet off and is looking at him longing, like waiting for some reaction, and he's like, no, this is done, this is over, you know, you broke up with me, and then then you made Xander Cage punch me in the lunchroom, whatever.
But I think that's the thing, though, is that, like, I don't even think he's looking at it. It's like he recognizes her just simply as another soldier at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think he's even looking at her as somebody from his past that he had any sort of relationship with. I think that entire human side of him is gone.
Absolutely.
Because even later in the film, where he's like has his own little party, and he's like he's like Carmen, like on the walkie-talkie, and he's like, when someone's like, oh, like, should we go looking for them? And he's like, no, like, it's not the mission. And then, like, he eventually, like 5 minutes later, he's like, I'm taking a small squad, like a small group of people with me to go looking for her. And it's like, well, that's against regulation. He's like, everybody else go on ahead. If anyone wants to follow me, go, like by all means you do, but suffer the consequences if you survive. And then, like, it's alluded to in the last, 5 minutes of the movie that it was Neil Patrick Harris that kind of whispered the idea into his ear, like, telepathically.
Which is fantastically set up, because do you remember that we mentioned the ferret scene where he's like, go, Neil Patrick Harris says to the ferret, go bug mom. And then Casper Van Dien says, you know, how'd you get him to do that? And he's like, well, I convinced him that there was like a grub up my mom's leg or something, so he's going to eat it. And Casper Van Dien says, never do something like that to me. And then he does it at the end, and it's what leads him to the brain bug. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
And that's the thing. You have like almost like you have a complete character arc, but maybe like in an inverse sort of way, because at the end you have them all kind of sitting there walking together, and yet they're all shells of themselves.
Yes.
They're all broken shadows of their former selves. And that's the point of the film. It's about stripping humanity out of the newer generation. And then by the final propaganda video we see of this, you see Carmen has become the captain of the ship. Mm-hmm. You see Johnny Rico's become Michael Ironside. And that's the point of all this. And like it ends with like they'll keep fighting and they'll win. And that's the thing. It's all, I don't want to say it's a machine. Because that's the thing, like, because like Johnny's like, let's basically nuke the entire planet, and it's like negative. Command has different plans for Planet P. Because like, no, it's not about winning this war. It's about the, like you were saying, Rob, the industrial war machine. It's just that's just what it is. It's a game. It's just everybody's fodder.
Mm-hmm. Has to keep.
It's not
going.
about winning. It's fodder. They keep doing this. And that's the point of all of it. You just gotta feed people enough small little victories. Like it's like, what's it feeling? It's afraid, and that's all it takes. You just feed the machine just enough that it keeps going forward, without getting to the end of the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not like they're gonna run out of bugs, you know. It seems like the bugs are everywhere. Because that's the thing that always gets me. Like the movie starts where they're like Clondathu, like that's the home planet of the bugs, and we need to destroy them for our survival. And then they do the whole Planet P thing when they get the distress call, and it turns out, you know, I think when they're all getting attacked at the outpost, and then they set up the communication with, I don't know, some ship or something for rescue. They're like, you know, oh, we need rescue on Planet P, and the person on the comm says something like Planet P's deserted, and so clearly there's more bugs than we know out there. At least in the timeline of this movie, we learn that there's more planets with more bugs, and we can just keep colonizing or keep moving. Humans can just keep moving to other planets, and they're going to find other species to kill.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, you have Rue McClanahan pointing out that they can colonize other planets by like shooting their spore into space.
Yes,
so it's in the movie, basically. Yeah.
Well, Chris, I wanted to ask you, because I know in the book there's another alien species, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there is, but it's sort of like one of those things that like didn't quite make it as you know, but you know, it's been a long while since I read it, but what are you getting at?
I'm just curious if you can give us any backstory on that, if you from what you remember.
Oh, I'm gonna pass right now just because I'm confusing it with I think I'm confusing it with another book.
Well, I mean, in terms of, because I've never seen them, all of the direct-to-video sequels we have, do they keep fighting bugs, or are they fighting other species? Do we know?
No, it's still the arachnids.
Okay.
Like in the original, like 1950s text, there's another alien species on top of the arachnids.
Oh, sure.
Like,
I was just wondering if they
like
branched out in the sequels.
I don't know. Who knows in the animated series? But I
I don't think having a more intelligent, I don't think having like a more sophisticated antagonist would have serviced the narrative of this movie that well. So I think that's part of the reason why they were omitted. But but I mean, like then, like I don't know, that would have made it interesting because like it's sort of like you're supposed to feel some empathy for these bugs by the end of the movie, of course. So if you're a thinking person, I don't know, that might have.
But like that's the thing though. Like people, like I know a lot of people, like I know even Rob's mentioned it a bunch of time. Like one of his favorite moments in cinematic history is the Neil Patrick Harris like It's Afraid.
Oh yeah.
But like in that sequence right before that, where you have the brain bug like suck the living daylights out of Xander Cage, it's really hard to have empathy for these creatures. Like that's the thing I've always find fascinating about people who say that, like, oh, the humans are the villains. Like, say what you will about shooting the bugs with like machine guns. To see a bug literally impale someone through their head and suck out their essence to the point where they become like a dried out husk, like Xander Cage does, it's hard to have any sort of empathy for the creature at that point. Like that's the thing. Like say what you will, maybe it comes down to the essence of killing something, whether it's personal versus impersonal. Like the idea of stabbing something versus shooting it with a firearm, where one is obviously infinitely more personal than the other. But to have another creature, one that's designed to be so deliberately foreign and alien, pardon the pun, have it suck out a human being's essence through its brain in such like a graphic way, I think it's hard to have empathy for that creature at the end. And that's why, like, when people say that, like, oh, like, you're supposed to feel bad for these creatures by the end, I've never felt that way. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like
I mean, I think that notion all comes down to the pivotal line, "It's afraid," and then cheers erupt, where it's like it can't help but take that away from the movie, as in like if you're struggling to figure out what's going on here, like, you know, you'll see see that part, and then you'll see the two gears like really struggling to like make one full rotation, and be like, what did that movie just do to me?
Well, no, like obviously the intent is there. Like the fact that, like, think about that. Like you take out the alien and like, or the brain bug, and you replace it with, like, I don't know, something a little bit more cute and cuddly. Think E.T. and it's a completely different scene. Like obviously, like yeah, I get the point they're going at, but it's just the idea that like having the brain bug, what's the word, like violate a human being and kill them in such a graphic way, I think diminishes that. I think if you had the brain bug, I don't want to say, I think if the brain bug tried to analyze Xander Cage in a way that maybe he still dies, but it's more because Denise Richards did something to it, that by accident it killed them, I think you would make the creatures much more empathetic. Like, it's kind of like, not to bring this back, or not to bring this to something like Ender's Game, and maybe meaning more the novel versus the movie with Harrison Ford and, oh God, Ben Kingsley, spoiler alert. But like, I think the idea is if you made the creatures a little bit more empathetic, and that, like, oh, maybe, like I said, instead of them having like deliberately there to suck the essence out of Xander Cage, and you had like, oh, it's trying to maybe do I don't know, bring this back to Star Wars, Borg gullet him, where like it just like tentacles that like wrap around him and like kind of like bind him, and then Denise Richards is very reactive and does something that then accidentally kills or like frightens the brain bug and it kills Xander. I think that would have worked better in making the bugs much more human-esque, as opposed to just having it be there to kill the human.
Right, but are you supposed to think about that? Are you supposed to think about that until the very end of the movie, I guess, is the question, right?
Well,
like, is it part of the faux propaganda that they're monsters and we shouldn't empathize with them right till the very last minute? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I think you could have blurred the line at that. I think you could have very easily had a sequence where it's like, well, did the bug mean to kill him, or did the actions of Denise Richards in this hypothetical scene, what's the word, lead it on the path to that? Where it's like human being. Like I said, I think there's a way to doing that. Like, you either have to make the brain bug, you have to make it a little bit more. I don't want to. Oh God, this is the wrong word to use, but I can't think of a better one at the moment. Cuddlier. You either have to make it a little bit less grotesque, or you have to make its actions less grotesque. You have to kind of pull back just a little if you want that ending with Doogie Himmler to be more impactful. And that's just my own 2 cents. Not saying the movie did anything right or wrong.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You make a good point on that end, Zach, but I feel like I have never had an issue with that because we do get the opening scene in the Rue McClanahan classroom where they are dissecting the bugs to learn about them, and we get the propaganda scene where Neil Patrick Harris is like, if you shoot one of their legs off, he shoots the leg off, it's still 86% combat effective, so aim for the spine, or aim for the whatever nerve or whatever he says.
Optical nerve, yeah.
And so I feel like this is just adding to that thing that we were saying, that this is all part of the machine of war, that we're doing these bad things to the bugs. So of course the bugs are going to do the same thing to us. They're going to kill us to learn more about us. And that's what the brain bug is doing.
Sure.
And then it's even bookended by the test on the brain bug that gets censored out at the very end.
Yes. But there's something, speaking of the test on the brain bug, I think it's very interesting, and I'm curious what you guys think of this. The design of the brain bug's mouth is very intentionally a reference to a certain part of the female anatomy.
The vaginal mound?
Yes.
I mean,
why wasn't that in the IMDb parental guide?
it's explicitly stated in the bonus features, but
well, yeah, like obviously yes, but like I've always been curious as to why, and the fact that you have also a very phallic thing protrude through the quote unquote vaginal mound. I've always found that interesting. Yeah, I've never been able to interpret what they're trying to say with that.
That's an interesting thing. You know, one part of me wants to say that Paul Verhoeven is a dirty pervert, and of course he's
he is.
Yeah, I know, I don't really. I've never thought of like why that would be an intentional choice, or maybe not. Maybe not that. What I mean is, I've never really understood how that ties into the film. I'm in agreement with you there, Zach.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I mean. Is like that clearly the design of the brain bug was very, very intentional, and they could have very easily pulled back. Like I said, not to bring this back to Ender's Game. Like think about like, and I'm just going to reference the movie because at this point I imagine the more people have probably seen that movie at some point. I think it's one of those movies that's always for free on like some streaming service. But it's the thing of it, like you see the bugs in Ender's Game, and for the most part they're not human like at all. Mm-hmm. And at the very end, like Ender saves the queen, and the queen is this very cuddly creature as opposed to all the other versions of it we've seen so far when it's fully matured. And I think if they would have made the brain bug a little bit more innocent, either visually or through its actions, and again, you have to be very, very subtle with this, which we know they can be, because this is a very subtle film when it comes to its satire. In certain instances, not all the time. It knows when to go be up and beyond and well below the surface. And I just think that would have made the ending a little bit more impactful, at least in my humble opinion. Not saying, like I said, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it would, at least for me.
When you say that, because you mentioned earlier, I am imagining and very much enjoying the same exact scene as it plays out in the movie. Like the whole brain sucking thing, but with E.T., like literal E.T. That would be great.
There's a fan edit out there somewhere, I imagine.
Yeah. His glowing finger like just shoots into Patrick Muldoon's forehead and sucks his brain out.
They sucked his brains dry.
No, I see what you're saying, Zach. I mean, I think though there is also that layer of, you know, the bugs in this movie are very much disgusting, you know, and even when we get that one of the great scenes in the movie in the propaganda video of the when the war starts, it's the narrator saying everybody's doing their part, and you see little kids stomping on cockroaches. Like they're not stomping on like, you know, fuzzy caterpillars or like butterflies or, you know, anything like that. I think it's very intentional to pick the most disgusting insects.
Sure. And that's obviously also very much the whole point too of like finding a straw man when it comes to like these totalitarian governments, where it's like, okay, like the enemy's out there, you can't do anything to stop them, but right next door there's somebody that you can pick on, and it's like, oh, okay, like no, like that's brilliant too. Yeah, like no, like definitely no, I agree 110%.
I read that those cockroaches and that when the kids were stomping on them, they were fake cockroaches.
Oh, geez, Rob, you must have been so disappointed.
I know. At least I went balls to the wall and killed a real cockroach for a music video.
Oh god, I'm trying to think of other moments in this that are just like, because again, this is like one of those movies that if it weren't for Chris, Rob and I would literally be going through every single scene of the movie, like Cat in the Hat style.
Well, I
We're just
gotta do
breaking down
one.
every moment.
You got to do one,
Go
which
for
is,
it.
well, let's definitely, pour one out for Fort Joe Smith, and one of the most delightful commercial vignettes that take place in the film, where we see a completely massacred Mormon colony, and it censors the cow being eaten, but then seconds later we're looking at just carnage of all these Mormons who were just overrun by the arachnids.
I like that. The whole decimated the Mormon colony or whatever he says. That's great.
Like, could you just I think Mormons are as crazy as the next guy, but can you just imagine sitting beside a Mormon in the theater when that scene came up, just out of nowhere, about nothing? It's amazing.
The Mormon walks out. Like I would imagine, look at the grosses of this movie, like state by state, in like Utah, just plummeted after opening weekend.
It's just like all these Mormons died horribly. Next, what? Never come back to it.
They walk out of the theater. What the fuck was that about? Oh my god, yeah, that's fun. Like I said, there's some really interesting stuff in this movie. I found it interesting. Like you look at like all the characters in the movie, and they all are like done by like portrayed by actors that are almost like too pretty, and yet like you have the character of Dizzy, and Dizzy almost feels out of place in this movie because like she I think Johnny Rico is a pretty human character. Dizzy's probably the most realistic character that anybody can like kind of like project themselves onto.
Sure. Yeah, I like Dizzy in this movie, and I mean, it's kind of set up in service of her death for that transition for Johnny Rico, like we talked about before, or that kind of last push over into the war machine. But other than that, I mean, she's good. It makes sense. She has a great character arc where she's not just the like she starts in the beginning, like the forlorn, unrequited love type of thing.
Okay, it should be said, like, I understand, like, for the like narrative reasons of the film, like Johnny has to like pursue Denise Richards, but like at the end of the day, Dizzy is infinitely more attractive than Carmen. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm just putting it out there. To me, if I had to pick one, I would have been like, okay, Dizzy, I don't know what your plans are after high school, but let's go figure them out over like Denise Richards going off to like the Space Navy.
I don't know. I like them both. I mean, 1990s Denise Richards is gorgeous, but definitely, she has no personality in this movie. So Dizzy has that.
Just like the real Denise Richards in real life.
Insert air horn noise here. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob. Do it. Remember, folks, she married Charlie Sheen. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. That kind of says it all. Remember she had a TV show, Rob? Remember that from The Suit? The only reason I remember it existed because The Suit. Remember was Denise Richards had a TV show?
Oh, yeah, I think so. It's coming back to me now.
Non-flashback.
She didn't do much after this movie, right? I mean, she was in some stuff, but...
She was this the same year that she was in the James Bond movie as Christmas Jones?
Oh, that's right, she wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember what year that was, but yeah, that's right.
What year was that? Christmas Jones. Was that 95 or 97?
I think that's Tomorrow Never Dies, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it's 99.
99. Okay. Oh no, she had a pretty big year. 97 she does Starship Troopers. 98 is Wild Things, and 99 is The World Is Not Enough. Damn. Damn, that's talk about like a 3-year period where someone was just on top of the world.
Oh man. Oh, so another person in this movie that I totally forgot, and you can almost miss it, but like Denise Richards' pilot school friend is Amy Smart.
Yeah,
and she's in it for like two shots.
Well, she's like, yeah, you see her like at one point, and you see her at the very end, like where she's like under her Carmen's rule.
Yeah, and I was watching it last night, and I was like, is that Amy Smart? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, good for her, I guess.
Okay, I kind of like if you look at Denise Richards' like filmography, I like the names of her characters. I like how in Undercover Brother she plays the character White She-Devil.
Nice.
And then you look at Love Actually, and her character's name is Carla, the real friendly one.
Implying there's more than one Carla in that movie?
I guess. I'm kind of fascinated by this. Oh my God, Denise Richards, what have you done?
What have you done? What have you
Oh
become?
Oh my God, what has she done? She's kind of just done stuff, but like never anything like in any sort of like meaningful way. Like she's always been working.
Has she been in a Sharknado yet?
When those start?
Oh, maybe
she was
like
in the Medea movie.
2012?
Okay. She was in Blue Mountain State. I remember that in college. People loved her in that.
Sure.
Oh my God. Yeah. She was in something called Operation Neighborhood Watch. A Girl is a Gun. American Satan. Okay, you have my attention.
American
Girlfriend.
Satan.
Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce. Okay, Rob, we might have to do a series of Denise Richards stuff she's done post Starship Troopers.
She's going to be the next Dean Norris.
Yes. My Adventures with Santa.
Not Satan as the sequel to American Satan?
Oh, is she still on The Bold and the Beautiful?
I mean, none of us know the answer to that, of course.
Okay, that's fair. Money Plane. Have you heard about Money Plane, Rob? With Kelsey Grammer?
I have not. Is it a plane physically made out of money, though? That'd be interesting.
No, it's really stupid. I'll send you clips from it. Yeah, she's in there. She's on the poster with Kelsey Dick Grammer and Thomas Jane.
There's and when it comes to sort of like we touched a little bit on the direct-to-video sequels, but there's another like sort of interesting footnote in the aftermath of Starship Troopers that's definitely worth mentioning, and that there was a vaguely children-oriented animated TV show that I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen any of that.
No.
But I remember it being on when I was a kid, and it was playing on cable here, and I think it was just called Roughnecks: Starship Troopers or something like that. And that it's probably and it's bad, but it's probably the only. Oh yeah. It's the only piece that sort of pays some attention to the source material. Like these other sequels are just like what I remember renting Starship Troopers 2 from Blockbuster when it came out, and I went over to a friend's place and I'm like, this is gonna be amazing. We turned it off after 20 minutes. Like we were so jaded. We were just like, what is the world? This is so terrible. But that cartoon does some interesting stuff where it actually pulls some stuff from the original book that didn't fit into the movie. And I think you mentioned one of them earlier. Like there's this vaguely sentient race that helps the bugs that I think they have a really stupid name in the cartoon. I can't remember if it's the same in the book, but that's why I'm sort of hesitant to get into it, because I don't want to blur the cartoon in the original book, but because I'm sure that's horribly offensive to fans of the original author, but it's definitely more worth exploring than the sequels, just because the idea that and Paul Verhoeven was an executive producer on it, which is fun as well. Ooh. But it's definitely like one of those times where like it's mostly an 80s phenomenon where you'll get a cartoon or a pitch of a cartoon based on an R-rated film for children. Like there was almost an Aliens cartoon that didn't quite happen, but the toy line came out. I think there was a Rambo cartoon, which like how were the kid? There's several famous examples of these things where it's like, I don't know how the kids were supposed to be familiar with the source material, but somebody thought it was a good idea along the way.
I just hope that, they make like a Rambo cartoon and all the kids get attracted to it because they think it's a tie-in to Gremlins 2 when Gizmo dresses up as Rambo, and they're like, oh yeah, it's Gremlins 2.
What? What are you talking about, Rob?
He's describing the subset of the audience that doesn't get the scene where it shows the recruitment guy's robot arm.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to point out that when Starship Troopers 2 was released on DVD in the summer of 2004, much like Chris, I was super hyped for it. Like I remember being so excited for this because I love Starship Troopers. I remember I got the DVD immediately. And I only watched it once. I've never watched it again. I only have one memory from that movie. One. I remember because it's one of those direct-to-video movies where it all takes place in one room because they had a budget of $15.
Yeah, it's like blue. I remember there's just phony walls right up against it everywhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if somebody shuts a door too hard, the entire set shakes. and I remember there's a female commanding officer, and I remember at one point she says the line there's too much fucking going on around here, not fighting. And I'm like, what? I remember being 11 years old being like, what is this? Like, I just want to see some bugs. I just want to see some bug shot.
And I actually think the animation quality got even worse with the third one. And if you just want to treat out there, definitely don't watch the third one, but go on YouTube and look up the trailer for Starship Troopers 3, and you'll see some of the, like, we're talking about, this probably came out 10 years after the original movie, and like just seeing those arachnid aliens rendered in the most piss poor CGI you could possibly imagine is so disheartening compared to that's the one that stars Casper Van Dien again as well, the third one. So like it's just like it's like how did this happen? Like, how was the ball dropped so hard on this franchise? It's really a sad moment.
Because the movie never had, like, that first movie was it wasn't a flop, but like it lost money in theaters, and they got lucky and they recouped it on home video.
Right,
like,
but it's like, leave it alone, man. Like, why you, like, you know, like, who's thought it was an amazing idea to just keep pummeling that dead horse? That, like, you know what I mean?
Because it made a ton of money on home video. Because they're like, okay, so like there's a market here.
Yeah.
We just don't want to spend a lot. We just got to spend enough money so we can like keep roping in that audience. It's like how they keep making Tremors movies. It's like there's a market here. It's just a very small market.
Hasn't this happened with a lot of Verhoeven's American films? Like, other people go on to make sequels and stuff?
Well, yeah, because like, but the thing about those that like Starship Troopers did not make money in theaters. All of his other films of like I guess like Chris put it, like definitive Paul Verhoeven, all made a ton of money. Like RoboCop made an insane amount of money. Total Recall made an insane amount of money. Basic Instinct made an insane amount of money. It wasn't until Showgirls where it was like, oh God, like he kind of jumped the shark. And so he went running back to his wheelhouse of like RoboCop. And the only problem is that like Starship Troopers made money. It just cost way too much to make. And that was the issue. Like, I think about it, like Jurassic Park, like 3 years earlier cost $63 million. This cost $40 more million. Like, that's the issue. Like, if they could have kept the budget to like in that same range, you have easily gotten a Starship Troopers 2 in the early 2000s. Easily.
Okay.
And that was the issue, is that like it just cost too much money. It's like a lot of movies do that, like oddly enough. It's just like they made money. The production budget was too high.
Well, there is a Showgirls too as well. I don't know if you're aware of that, Zach.
Yeah, I know, Rob. I listened to the episodes.
I was gonna make a joke that like there probably is a Showgirls too, but I didn't actually know for a fact till just
there's
now.
a basic instinct too.
Yep.
Yeah, but that was treated like a real movie, unlike Starship Troopers 2 and 3.
Basic Instinct 2, there's a director's commentary, and halfway through you hear a gunshot and a loud thud. That's the director's commentary.
Oh man.
Yeah, but no, like even like think about all the Paul Verhoeven movies that have been like bastardized. You have like the RoboCop remake, the Total Recall remake, the Showgirls 2, Starship Troopers 2, Starship Troopers 3.
RoboCop suffered that really bad. Like I feel like I actually don't know to this day. Like I know about RoboCop 2, and then I don't know if it's 3 and 4. Like one of them is like cobbled together out of a TV. I think one of them is like a TV series that got cut short and then bastardized into a film. Like maybe it's 4. Like it really got muddy towards the end.
Well, I know, like, oh god, I think 3 is like direct, like almost direct to video. Like it got released in the theaters, but like it's just like, oh god, what's his name? Peter Weller didn't even want to be involved with it.
Yeah, I swear one of them was like a mini series that was like later cut into a direct to DVD film or something like that.
But yes, Starship Troopers 2. I think we should. I think that's one of those movies too, Rob. I think the Cinemati's. We need to ask Mark Cuban for like $200 million, and we'll make another Starship Troopers movie.
I'm telling you, there's like I recently saw a trailer for a new animated one, and I was like, what the hell are they doing? Who allowed this? It's like the worst trailer I've seen in a while. It features Casper Van Dien and the lady who plays Dizzy in voice actor form, and it's like, the animation, the character animation is just horrifying, and it looks like it's from like 10 years ago. Somebody just let's get on change.org and like shut it down. I don't know.
Dude, well, I'm going to. We got to figure out who owns. I found out actually Disney released this film overseas. Touchstone was the international distributor for Starship Troopers. It's a Sony film, but they released it internationally. So maybe Disney has some hand in here. But I want to call up Netflix. They're writing blank checks to anybody nowadays. Tell them we want to do a Starship Troopers miniseries, 6 episodes, and we're going to do it the way I said. We'll get all the original actors back because nobody outside of maybe Neil Patrick Harris is doing anything right now.
Sure.
Like, there's no way Denise Richards and Castor Van Dien are going to say no to this. Like, all we got to do is promise Castor Van Dien some, like, hot soup. We promise Denise Richards some blow, and everyone will be back on board.
Like, Casper Van Dien is currently playing Johnny Rico. Like, still.
he's out, like, in a New Mexican desert just shooting bugs.
No, like, just in a sound booth. But, yeah.
Both.
He's actually in that new movie. Like, I'm serious. Like, it's messed up.
I know. Because again, it's a property that people recognize. They're going to keep making it, Chris.
What a time.
How about that for HBO, Matt? Instead of doing a new version of Doom, we should do a new version of Starship Troopers.
I'll take it. I mean, they're going to do it eventually, right? It's almost like
exactly
the law of very large numbers. Everything's going to happen.
Exactly. If anyone's going to bastardize it, we should at least bastardize it with love.
Even if they leaned, like, did a remake that, like, super leaned into what people called, like, pro-fascism stuff in the original book and just made it, like, nuts. Like, even that would be good and interesting. You know what I mean? Like I said, how has it not been done? I don't know.
There is a way to do a new Starship Troopers. You just now have to think about it. Look how far the military-industrial complex has changed, not just in 20 years, but in like the 70 years since the original novel was written. You could very easily change that. You could so easily do that by today's standards. You by playing with like everything that happens nowadays when it comes to just like rules of engagement and just the over liberal tendencies of just politics and its influence on the military.
Sure.
I think you could very easily do that. I think if you gave Rob and I don't know, $100,000 in like a briefcase full of cocaine, him and I could bang out this script in like a month. Very easily, Rob and I could do this. I don't know. Chris can come in and he can consult for like $50,000.
I want the cocaine loose in the briefcase.
Well, Robert Heinlein knocked out the original book in 6 weeks because he was mad.
Exactly. Like, if you look at his IMDb credits, like the writer of both RoboCop and Starship Troopers between like, what was it, 87 and 97, like there's nothing in between it other than just like lines of cocaine. And I'm not joking, Rob. Like it's very much is literally a suitcase full of cocaine. It's not. It's just powder in a suitcase.
Yes.
No more, no less.
Wonderful.
It's great. But yeah, no, this movie. Anything else about this movie? I'm trying to think. We could go through literally every single scene in this movie. The fact that they have back the tanks, like that's great.
Yeah. I really like Sugar Watkins. How much he hates bugs. He's great, and he blows himself up to take out the bugs. When he's like, Watkins, you can't stay here, and he's like, I'm trying to kill some bugs, sir. And it's just like that's all he wants to do is just kill these things. It's great. It's over the top. It's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, like, the whole sequence where they take that fort and defend it is like just some of the best like sci-fi alien action that you can ever like. Forget the whole story, just like that's a cinematic achievement, just like defending that fort for a little while, like for when this came out and just how it holds up over time. There's a lot of great stuff there. Thanks for hitting back to tanks, because I just had that as a 1 bullet point note that I was going to bail out on. And then
no, that fort scene, you're right, Chris. Like them just shooting, like everybody over the edge, just shooting downwards as the bugs get there. And then when the flying bugs come in, and then we even get that great shot of like the bugs like ripping down the supports of the wall, and it's crushing other bugs, but it doesn't matter. There's so many of them. It's just brute force. Even before that, I love when that general comes out of like the closet, and he's like, "We're all gonna die," and he's just freaking out. And it's that's a great sci-fi setup and scene.
Rob, you know who the general is, right?
Yeah, the coach from Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, but he's also Quado from Total Recall.
Oh yeah, that's true. I remembered him more recently because he's the one that gets whipped in the bathroom in Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah, the BDSM gym coach.
Marshall Bell, yeah.
Quaid. Oh God. But like even like going back to like that fourth sequence you guys were mentioning, like that even that part of the film feels almost more like Western-esque, like it's Custer's last stand.
Yep.
Like the idea that like, okay, they are going to lose, but how many of them will be able to survive this at the end of the day? And I think that part too, like you don't get that in movies any day. There's like this visceral, like it's funny. It's like almost an entirely CGI battle, except for the fact where you have real actors and like you have like that little like small set. Yet like there's such a visceral nature to it. Like I think like these people are about to be like they are swarmed and being overwhelmed.
And I think there's something unique about the fact that it's just like hard sunlight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's why the CGI looks better or worse. I feel like anecdotally you would hear that that's not good for primitive CGI, but like, I don't know. There's something about the fact that it's like not overcast at all. It's just direct, harsh sunlight on everything. And maybe it works narratively because the first couple encounters with the bugs are at night, and it's just like, now you're going to actually, it's like more of a, like, we're finally going to like reveal their form a little bit more, but it feels novel that it's just so bright and colorful.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing is being hidden in the shadows. There's no moment of Luke Skywalker not murdering droids, dismantling droids with his hood up for 9/10 of the battle because they want to save money. Like that's the great part. Like it doesn't like even like at the end where you have like the giant like beetle that can like incinerate things with like its little like forehead like flamethrower. Like even like the drop ship is like pulling away. You see it trying to incinerate the ship, and like you can see parts of the corner of like the drop ship are like tinged with black. And it's like, that's great. Like it's just a small detail, but like it matters. Like you might not have noticed it, but your brain did.
And how about that guy who just gets like melted as they're escaping? He's just like screaming and like melting into acid as the ship takes off. That's some good stuff. Oh man. And I mean,
I really creative deaths in this.
The action scenes are so good because it's not the whole first like big war scene which is in the dark, and then the outpost scene. I think out of all of those, the only time we see somebody reload is when they're on their last stand trying to get on the ship. And it's like Dizzy. She's like, I'm out. And then he like throws her a clip and says like, make them count. But I love the fact that whole first war scene, we don't see anybody reload. And that makes it flow so much better and makes it more visceral because it's just like, well, it doesn't matter if either the bugs kill me. If I had to take the time to reload, the bugs would kill me. So why even waste time on that? Just have the total push from both sides like against each other. It's awesome.
I think it also adds to like the surrealistic nature of that battle at night. Like the fact that it's almost nightmare-esque. Like it's almost like it's removed from reality.
Absolutely. It's great.
Starship Troopers. They don't make movies like they used to.
Yeah, just with the just like I was saying before, to mention again, like everything is so set up, and everything kind of pays off. And like you just mentioned, one of our favorite phrases, Zach, is you might not have noticed it, but your brain does. Like I love the fact that there's that dude in the shower when they're like, why are you here? And they're all talking about why they're there in the military. And the one guy's like, I'm here because they're going to pay for my schooling because, without that, it would cost an arm and a leg. And that dude gets his limbs ripped off later. And I'm like, that's such a good touch. Like everything is set up, everything pays off, everything's so minute every level of detail is so fleshed out. It's just a wonderful thing. And there's never any huge crazy exposition, which Zach knows I love in movies. You just see it, you know what's happening, you're along for the ride.
Exactly. It knows when to hold your hand at appropriate times, and it knows when to let go. Like any good filmmaker intuitively knows how to do.
Yeah, even the Clancy Brown thing I love, where he's like, he goes to, Dean Norris, and he's like, I want to see battle. And Dean Norris says, the only way you're seeing battle is if you demote yourself. And then at the end of the movie, when it's revealed he's the one who captured the brain bug, Casper Van Dien says something like, oh, good job, sergeant or lieutenant or whatever. He's like, nope, I'm a private. And so it's like, that's we only needed 2 scenes to really make that payoff. It's perfect. Clancy Brown's the man.
He is.
Mr. Krabs is the man.
Good old Mr. Krabs. And everything, all the other 800,000,000 things that he's done over his career, Clancy Brown. Well, even like other moments of foreshadowing, like even like where like Jake Busey's like, why are we sitting there like using like knives in a nuke war? Mm-hmm. And he like pins his hand to like the target board. And at the end of the film, we see Denise Richards with a knife slice off the thing of the brain bug. It's like, it's good. Like it's all there. It's all baked in.
Yeah, I love that Clancy Brown line as well. He says it so matter-of-factly, where he's like, your enemy cannot push a button if you disable his hand.
Exactly. Put your hand on that wall.
Medic!
Oh
Even the little Jake Busey touch that he just plays like violin. That I don't even know why we need that, but we got it, and it fits so well. It's a little bit of world building.
He's got a space violin.
Yes,
he has like the neon green like plastic violin. Which I love. Is it a violin or is it a fiddle?
I don't know for sure, but
it's got to be a Steinberg.
Oh God,
it's great. Every layer of this movie, down to the tiny details, is fantastic. You know, even like I've just the things that I'm remembering now is like when Casper Van Dien tells his parents he wants to go into the military, and his dad's like, I'd rather be like lashed than see you go into the military, and then Casper Van Dien ends up getting the 10 lashes for his bad practices as a squad leader and stuff like that. Oh, it's all so good.
I guess there's one last thing, considering that we have one of Canada's most premier toy collectors with us. Chris, did you ever delve into the Starship Troopers toy line?
No, but it's one of those things where like I've looked into it and it's been tempting, but you know, it's cool that it was ever made. It's like the cartoon series. It's like God bless these crazy people we no longer have in our culture who like did these kind of things for children. But I can't splinter off like that, or like, you know, it's already like I have like so much of the vintage stuff that it's like I can't. It's like I've decided
there's only so many shelves in my house.
I know it's basically one entire wall, and like you guys have probably seen it on calls before, but it's just like I've decided and accepted that that's the coolest stuff, and like, you know, you can't splinter off. But you know, have I checked out videos of them and then been like, damn, I should eBay some of that stuff? Absolutely, but I've resisted the urge.
I love the fact you look at some of these names. It's not just like the characters' names. They have like little like things in like parenthetical. Like there's Johnny Rico, Mega Marauder. There's Carbon Ibanez, Bug Thrasher, Ace Levy, Toxic Raider.
Oh yeah, well like this is the time period where we were getting like action figures of like buff Luke Skywalker with mech suits. You know what I mean? Like this was just the what was happening at the time with toys, right? So like those, like when you have Batman in 40 different colors with different accessories, just repainted slightly and given like some sort of chest piece that shoots something. So like that, it sort of fits in with what was going on at the time.
Some of this stuff is actually really cool. Like they have like the tanker bug, like a couple of little figurines. They have like the retrieval drop ship. Like some of this stuff is like, if you were like 6 or 7 at the time, you would have had a lot of fun with this.
Well, the only one I really thought about getting was just like the sort of standard Arachnid Warrior, because like that's probably the most iconic design from the film. But you know, it's you can't have it all.
I don't know. It's like it's tempting though. Like something like it's kind of like it brings back instant KB toy memories. Like I look at this stuff and it's like, oh, I never would have seen this at Toys R Us. This would 100% been like a KB Toys thing.
Right. Yeah. I never saw those when they came out. I think my first awareness of this movie was like the DVD release, but it was like a early DVD release, like probably around like 2001 or something like that. I think the name of this movie also is like to an uncultured person, like just the title is like sort of off-putting, and I think that's part of why it's not like as culturally pervasive as it should be. I think there's just something about like Starship sounds like a Star Trek like nerdy word, and then like Troopers is just like, is this an army movie? Like I think like if you don't know the source material or like what it is, it's just like if you're the Joe, I don't know anything, you just hear that and you're like, I don't like Star Trek.
I think that's the brilliance, though. They gave the most generic title ever. It's supposed to be like It's supposed to be like a generic like propaganda film. I think.
Right. I just think that there's some subset of the audience that turns off. Unfortunately.
Sure.
I don't know.
Unfortunately.
Well, any other final thoughts on Starship Troopers from you guys? I think that was everything I had.
I've got nothing.
Okay.
Other than literally going through every single scene of the movie.
Yeah.
I got nothing else.
It's, you know, it's like you're tempted to tell people to watch it, but like if you got to this point of the podcast and have never seen it, drive yourself smash straight through the gates of the mental asylum. Like don't even put the brakes on it.
Go to Walmart, pick up the 4K Blu-ray for $15. You won't regret it.
All right. Well, then I guess that brings us to our questions. I think I want to start with you, Zach, since this is your series. What do you think for Cinema Oddities and Late Night for Starship Troopers?
Oh, Rob, it is a clean sweep across the board. The Total Recall precedent does not come into effect because this movie lost money at the box office in its initial run. So, yes, easily a cinema oddity, because there's probably quite not another film like this. And a late night movie, without a doubt. This is a fun, rousing film. And you maybe not. I do say yes to late night movie, but I think that ending, it makes you a little too pumped. It's like they'll keep finding and they'll win. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go out to the back I'm gonna go out and buy like one of those. Oh god, like those it's for killing like what carpenter bees, like what, the salt gun.
Oh,
you,
sure.
Like little salt pellets, you can like shoot like carpenter bees with it. You want to get one of those, just run around like the house just shooting bugs.
Gotta find some bugs to kill.
Exactly. It's hard to do that at midnight. So I'm gonna say late night movie with a slight asterisk.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually total agreement with you. I think this movie is so. This was a weird one. It's such an excellent satire. It's a fantastic film. It's so well made. That I was almost tempted to be like, it can't be a Cinema Oddities, but with just what this is, it has to be. It fits the bill. And hell yes to late night movie. I'm totally right there with you. This is something that, people should see and know more about. And like I said at the start, learn that it's not just some bug war movie. So, Chris, what do you think for Cinema Oddities and late night?
Just how much we've sort of talked about this weird thing going on culturally where like somehow so many people don't get it. It's like I couldn't allow myself to do anything to disservice one person out there from watching it. So I'm gonna have to say, and just for every detail of the movie, this is what we should be expecting movies to be, to have more than one layer to them, to have a couple things that you should think about after the fact. And as far as that's concerned, I'm going to give it a yes on both. I think it's a cinema oddity, and as far as late night movie goes, I have employed it in the prescribed fashion at least 3 separate times.
Nice. All right, we're all in agreement. I don't think this ever happens.
I have a question. Is there a Paul Verhoeven movie that would not be considered a late night movie?
No. All of them I've used in the prescribed fashion.
Yeah.
All the seven I listed anyway.
Yes, that's okay. Yes, it's one thing. Okay, one thing I do want to bring up, and it probably would come up again at some point. We were talking about like what? No, we already did Total Recall because probably will come up again. What's the deal with Paul Verhoeven's dream project, Crusade, with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Have you guys heard about this?
I've heard of it. I don't know. I don't really know a lot about it though.
Every time I hear this, like in my research for this, like it comes up because like Paul Verhoeven, I was always his dream project that he kind of could never get off the ground, like after Showgirls, and by that time too, Schwarzenegger was starting to become like washed up because like Last Action Hero happened, and like Schwarzenegger was like going into like his end of days phase where it was like, oh, like Schwarzenegger's kind of doing schlock. But like anytime I hear, like there's like, I think there's like one piece of like, there's a couple pieces of concept art that are out there, and anytime I think of it, I automatically think of the scene from Last Action Hero of "To be or not to be, not to be," as the castle like explodes. And anytime that movie comes up, like I just want to see that movie. Like to me, that might be my own personal like Jodorowsky's Dune. Okay. I want to see Paul Verhoeven's Crusade with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just want to see that so bad. Like I could like $100 million, like early to mid like 90s, just like medieval film with Schwarzenegger just doing Schwarzenegger type stuff. Like I just want that so badly.
Well, as much as I'd like to believe it'd be a possibility, because Arnold still is going back to doing some stupid stuff. I saw some trailer with him and Jackie Chan that was not to be believed. But Verhoeven looks like he's got some in development stuff on IMDb, but we all know I haven't caught up with anything he's done recently, but we all know there's no chance that the world's allowing him to be the Paul Verhoeven of old. So I haven't looked into any of that. But and also the man's 82 years old, like every day we have left with him is a gift, but I don't think we're going to get around to that, unfortunately.
Okay, remember, Rob and Chris have homework. They have to go watch Elle before next time we reconvene. Because I remember watching that and being just kind of underwhelmed because of like what like the IMDb description is, but it's a pretty good movie at the end of the day.
Okay, I know. I have a copy of it, so I can check it out. But are we saying so? We should do a 2 weeks in a row on Knights of Vader. We start with Alien 3, and then we go to L.
Oh my God, L would be interesting because like you read the description for it, and it's like, okay, you look up on IMDb, it's like, oh, Michelle seems indestructible, head of a successful video game company. She brings the same ruthless attitude to her love life as to business. Being attacked in her home by an unknown assailant changes her life forever. When she resolutely tracks the man down, they are both drawn into a curious and thrilling game that may at any moment spiral out of control. Like that sounds like a great premise, and like you watch it, and it's like, oh, it's your typical like revenge lover film, and like it's still good though. Like it's still good. It's just like you don't expect that from like an actress that's like, oh good lord, like I think 60 by the time the film was made.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and it's also I think oh god, I don't know what language it is. I think it might be, I forget what language it is, but it's not in English.
I think it's French if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Right on. Okay, I will. Another thing to put on my list.
Rob, if you ever get bored, look up the Parent's Guide to L on look up the sex and nudity section because it's listed as severe. Okay, to whet everybody's appetites for this movie, I'll read the first one. We see a clip of a computer-generated monster holding a woman down on a table using its tentacles to go up the woman's skirt. The clip is seen at least 3 times.
Oh, okay. Didn't expect that.
There you go, Rob. There you go.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I guess with that little Verhoeven, we started with a Verhoeven tangent, we ended with a Verhoeven tangent. Perfect. That brings us to our snacks. I have to say, this is one of those movies that I get trapped into just watching, and I wasn't thinking too much about snacks. But I think we're all in agreement that the Cinemati's restaurant should have some co-ed showers, right?
Mariska Hargitay's not going to like that, Rob.
She doesn't like 99% of the restaurant, I think. She likes the front door.
Exactly.
That's it.
True that, son.
But
True
co-ed showers where people can rub their vaginal mound. That's great. The only other one I thought of, a scene we didn't mention, is I really like the there's that part of the propaganda film where there's like soldiers. They're like, here's our guns, kids. You want to hold them? We should have soldiers come in to show off their weapons to the kids in the sin-e-modities portion of the restaurant.
Oh, just straight up that?
Yeah, it's like a show and tell type of thing, and maybe they can hold them and we'll give them loaded weapons. I think it works.
Okay.
What did you guys have for snacks? Oh, I guess the other thing I want to say is I don't want to eat bugs. I don't like the idea of eating bugs. So I think that's low-hanging fruit. We could cook up some bugs and stuff like that, but I don't want that. So I'm sure Zach's gonna fight me on that.
Is there really any like food and drink in this movie?
Not even at that graduation dance, really.
You got a mess hall scene with some mashed potatoes and soggy looking corn, which I guess you could parlay into some sort of military ration menu item.
My only contribution is I like the idea of like at some point, was it Rico's getting a tattoo and Jake Busey like dumps vodka on it? Oh, yeah. I like the idea like for our first aid stations, it's just vodka.
Oh, that works. That's fine. I mean,
exactly. We don't need a first aid station. We have a fully stocked bar, and we charge people if they get cut.
Okay. Chris, any snacks you were thinking of?
Well, you kind of ruined mine. Like I was imagining, what if I were the guy in charge of the menu, the head chef at the Cinemati's restaurant, and I watched Starship Troopers, and I was very stupid, and I didn't get it, and I thought, yeah, I hate those bugs. Let's put an appetizer of just a nice big bowl of fried crickets.
Ugh. I don't know. Something about eating bugs weirds me out, and I've done it. I've had like the candied crickets or whatever they are, I did not enjoy it. I don't know. I know some places around the actual world do it, but eating bugs, I don't know.
Disgusting. I think we should have. You know what we should have, Rob? Because if you realize in this movie has a lot of like different colored goo. We should have some goo in the restaurant.
I like that. It's just goo.
Just having
exactly.
like squishy dispensers.
It's like orange goo, green goo. There's all sorts of goo in the movie. Like we need more goo in the Cinemati's restaurant. Different shades of it.
I think you have hit the exact pitch for like the Nickelodeon shows with the slime and stuff like that. We just need goo. Kids like goo.
No, what we do is, speaking of toys from like the late 90s, early 2000s, we find all of like the like reserves of gack that like Nickelodeon made like in the early 2000s, and we buy that and we spread it around the restaurant.
I like that. We find the remaining supply of the world's gack. Yes.
Yes.
It may have outlived its shelf life, unfortunately.
It's just like, what would that even look like now? Like, it would just like would have evaporated, so it's just like some like glitter like in like a sealed like plastic package.
Probably just really dried out. Yeah.
Oh my god! You look up gack in Google Images. Oh my god! It looks like it's radioactive. Oh my god!
Gack.
That poor girl probably doesn't have hands anymore. She probably has like cancerous lesions all over her fingers.
Well, it's just that those type of products definitely don't age well. It's like if you want a real horror show, look up like a 70s Stretch Armstrong, what it looks like today.
Ooh.
Oh my god. Okay, I found an article titled "How to Make Slime Without Borax." Nothing bad can come from that.
Without borax?
Yes.
I want more borax.
There's an ingredient for the menu item right there. Get some borax.
Oh wait, it's a toy called Smell My Gack.
God, are you sure that's a toy and not an adult video?
Okay, guess some of these flavors. These flavors are insane.
Flavors?
Yeah, there's flavors.
You said smell. Wouldn't it be scents?
Oh,
or are we eating them?
It's both. Oh my god, Rob. They have, this is insane. They have vanilla, bacon, flour, green apple, and the best one, stinky shoe.
Is it flour as in like the plant or the baked thing you use in baking?
The plant.
Oh, I would have loved it when it was just flour scented.
Yeah,
and it smells like
bothered me a little bit.
It smells like nothing.
All right, we're gonna go and buy some cupcake flavored gack. Actually, I have another idea for the Cinemati's restaurant. It might be not applicable to Starship Troopers. Nickelodeon has their make your own gack toy lab set. We should have that for Cinemati's, and it's different creations for the Cinemati's restaurant. You can bring, like, remember how they used to have that for like board games, like it's like Wheel of Fortune, like board game or Jeopardy. It's like, you can bring the game home with you. We should do that for Cinemati's. Like, have your own, like, insert like menu on the restaurant here, bring it home, and like it's a board game version. Like Cinemati's, like make your own
restaurant board game is a fantastic idea.
Like Cinemati's, like make your own glory hole caviar.
Both of these ideas are great. Chris, I love the board game idea because we would need to make the board infinitely big.
Oh, it's literally it's literally just like you're just redoing the game of life where like random chance just has horrible effects on you and you just sort of slowly move through it and various incidents befall you outside of your control. That sounds about right.
You lose your child in the restaurant.
Go back 3 spaces. Oh my god! I want to say that the Nickelodeon make your own gack thing might be responsible for the meth crisis because it looks like like a meth lab set.
I feel like I remember seeing commercials for that or something way back when. Now that you
I don't deny it. There's one called Gack's Alive. The magic wand brings magnetic gack to life. What the hell is this?
This is the strangest episode of Starship Troopers.
Oh god, but yes, that's my contribution to the restaurant.
Okay, I dig it. Any others from you, Chris, or are you gacked out?
No, I'm tapped out with my very unoriginal bug eating idea.
We're all gacked out now. Well, then I think Chris, thanks for being here. Thanks for talking about Starship Troopers and adding a bunch of craziness to the conversation. Imagine that now at the end of this podcast, someone is listening to it and a computer screen pops up. And it's got you on the screen, and it says, "Would you like to know more?" And they click yes. What more can you tell us about you, Chris?
Go ahead and follow me on Instagram at @ChrisPorteous, and maybe there's already a hilarious Alien 3 episode on Knights of Vader by now. Who knows?
Spoiler alert: there is not.
All right, Zach, would you like to give any indication on what we're doing next week? The next movie that should have collapsed governments.
You know what's so funny, Rob? On the blank check episode for Starship Troopers.
I thought we were going to get this whole way without you having to mention this, Zach.
I have to mention Starship
God.
Troopers. Was that they were talking? Whoever their guest was like Griffin's talking about however the guest was like texted them that morning before they recorded. Like, guys, I can't believe we're going to change the world by recording an episode about Starship Troopers. And I was so tempted to send that to Rob this morning. I was so tempted, except for the fact that I think eventually Rob would get to that and be like, "It's good that time that like Rob made a really funny joke and I figured out that like he ripped it off from like a Tosh.0 episode, and I just became like infinitely depressed. And I realized I'm going to be better than that person. I am not going to rip off a blank check joke.
Okay.
I'm just gonna rip off their entire format for the podcast, all the way down to our producer.
Oh God! But he's not the producer. We've been over this.
You're right. He's not the producer. He's the Ben-ducer.
So now that you've got blank check out of the way, would you want to give any indication of what we're doing next week?
All right, we're probably gonna do Tron/Tron Legacy unless I change my mind between now and next time we record. So
be a review of Gak.
There's a 50% chance that we'll talk about something next week.
Perfect. I like that. So that leaves us with how do we end this episode? And I think the only thing that I want to end this episode with is at the graduation party, they have this band, or these singers, I think. Yes. I don't know if you see the band. And they are playing a rendition of David Bowie's I Have Not Been to Oxford Town, but they changed the lyrics for the future, the 22nd century, and they call it I Have Not Been to Paradise. So I'd like to throw that in there in reverse. What do we think?
I am on board.
Okay. Well, once again, Chris, thanks for joining us. It was good to have you. I don't know, I guess Alien 3 will be the next time I talk to you, or if Zach makes us, Ludovico techniques us and makes us watch L sometime soon.
Well, one can only hope that you eventually witness the glory of Alien 3 and come around to my way of thinking.
And we all know, which cut do you have to watch, Rob?
The one that's on my hard drive.
Oh man, no, you got to figure that out, man, because a lot of internet dummies might think that the extended cut is the way to go, but they're wrong. So you're going to go theatrical as hard as you can.
Okay, I don't know which one I have.
And the only way you're going to know which one it is, Rob, initially, is by what comes out of what alien the face hugger impregnates. That's the only way you're going to know, basically.
What animal, but yes.
Whatever. It's not. At the end of the day, it's not a real movie, so it shouldn't be discussed in such a way. So
this is outrageous. If we had more time, I would derail this further, but I'm gonna wait for the time and the place.
He will abstain. He will abstain for now.
Ja,